How's it going, everyone? Welcome to episode 14 of the ControllerCast. I'm joined by none other than Andrew Ihausen, Parker Tedrow, and Johnny B. Wood. How's everyone doing, guys? Andrew, how about you start us off with how your week's been?
Doing good, man. I've been finally started going to the gym on a regular basis, so we're feeling good. It's been shitty weather, but you know what? We're out here in Omaha thriving, and you'll be back next week at this time.
Less than a week, I'll be back.
Yeah, so
For the wedding.
very
Let's go.
exciting.
What about you, Parker? How's life been? I know you've been up to some Last of Us stuff. What else?
Yeah, through this week, I've just been mainly binging through this game, getting ready to talk about it, and really just work and just normal daily stuff. Haven't really done anything crazy lately. How about you, Johnny?
Work's been pretty good actually. I feel like it's
No
calming
wedding
down
talk.
a little
I don't
bit.
want to hear about the wedding.
The
Something
wedding
else.
is in 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. Guys, we're gonna be talking about it. We are not 100% sure on the pod schedule yet because we're all like booked all of July.
Mhm.
So we'll have to see what happens. This episode might be a two-parter. But other than wedding stuff, watch through The Last of Us, all the cutscenes. I played it last year, but I didn't give myself enough time to play through it again. So we did that this week. But other than that, it was a pretty chill week. What about you, Arsenal? Did you already talk about your week?
No. This is kind of going into, it feels like whenever we do these like recordings, these midweek recordings, this one isn't a midweek recording, but our last episode was. It always feels like, oh man, like feels like forever ago when we did the last episode. But since the last episode, I did play through The Last of Us Part 2 a second time. I got the platinum on it. And what else? I've been playing Ratchet and Clank as well. Very, very fun game. Not usually a Ratchet and Clank guy, but this one, Insomniac's been on a fucking roll with this and Spider-Man, so I'll give it to them. New Tyler the
With
Creator
this
album.
Spider-Man? You mean
Wait,
this
what?
Ratchet and Clank?
Oh yeah. This yeah. Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man both. Okay, they've been on a roll. But what is it? And also, new Tyler the Creator album. Been listening to that. Seems pretty good so far, but I haven't listened to the whole thing. What else?
I forgot to mention I've been on a GTA kick. You and I, Ursula.
Yes, and hopefully we can do those new heists soon, or like the newer ones, not the original ones, because I remember me, Parker, and you did the OG ones.
I just want to get that flying car.
Yes. Everyone get back on GTA Online. We're not
Everyone
sponsored.
get back on it. It's fire.
But also, I've speaking of Parker's week, I want to publicly apologize on air to Parker Tedrow. Parker, just for some background to everyone. When we had the idea of ControllerCast, when we decided that we were going to do it, that was the night that Parker started playing The Last of Us Part 2. And that was back in February. So dude waited until essentially the last like 2 days to like start picking the game back up. But I'll give it to him. Parker, you went on a marathon spree and you played almost the back 2/3 of this game in 2 days, which is insane. I'll give it to you.
I think this is the only
shit.
I think that's the only game I can do that with. Like any other game, and it's like a nightmare. But with The Last of Us, it just feels great, man. I wouldn't do it any other way.
It's like binging a TV show.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is actually a little stupid little club we got now where pretty much all four of us played the back half of the majority, at least, of the back half of this game in like one sitting. It's brutal. I don't know if I would advise people to play it like that, but
it gives you a migraine headache. That I'll tell you.
Yeah.
That.
But that's how we handle things sometimes. That's how business gotta get done. So
Business gotta be business.
We've been talking about it. We ourselves have been waiting a long time to do this episode. We've been waiting a long time to talk about this thing. It is the second part of The Last of Us Part 2. Lot to talk about here. And like John said, we're expecting this to potentially be a long episode. You might see this be split into 2 parts. Obviously, if it doesn't, I'll probably cut this little bit out, but we'll see if it goes that long. I think it might. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. I guess let's just start off with general thoughts, I guess, on the game, as we always do, as we review things. I guess I'll go ahead and start off with my general thoughts on this game. So I think from the Hades episode, I think we kind of dropped that. I think I dropped that this was my game of the year last year. When I played it, I thought it was phenomenal. But I will say, as time has gone by, I've always been like not 100% confident in terms of like, okay, was it as great as I thought it was? Like, maybe like was the controversy right? Was it maybe am I overhyping this game in my head? So I was really excited to play through it again a second time. And playing through it a second time, I have no regrets, or not. I have no hesitation in saying that this is one of the greatest games I've ever played. It's, I think, a totally worthy successor to the first game, and I may potentially, for me, before this second playthrough, I was kind of like, it was always a question of, do I like it as much as the first game? But after playing it a second time, it's now coming into the conversation in my own head of like, I think I may like this game more than the first, which says a lot, but kind of like encapsulating my thoughts. I think this game's a masterpiece. I think this game, I think this game is like just like a staple for like the medium, like video games as an art. And I'm excited to talk about it. And I think this game will be, I think this game is going to be very influential, maybe, and I think it's going to be remembered more and more fondly as every year goes by. I've already seen the general reception of this game change a lot in 1 year. So yeah, that's a lot there, but yeah, I think this game is fantastic. What about you, Andrew? Share us your general thoughts on this game.
Well, when I played this game, like Arshil said, I played the back half in basically an entire day. And then I came back a little while later and for the platinum run, played the entire game in 1 day. I would extremely not advise that. That will make you feel like some kind of like video game veteran by the time it's over and your eyes will burn. But you got that plat, so it's all good.
Little flex.
I mean, for this game, I feel like I know a lot of people going into it were like disappointed because of the leaks, which we'll probably talk about later. But I like when games take risks, and I like when movies like take big risks with their storylines, especially a series where you have established characters that are like fan favorites in some cases. I mean, I think just because of like the age difference, because I didn't play through The Last of Us 1 before The Last of Us 2 came out. I played it just one time through back in 2013 when it came out.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, like this is a game that I immediately like better than 1. Just because I like the tone of this game a lot more. And yeah. I wasn't really comparing apples to apple, like the 2 games together while I was playing it, just because I hadn't played The Last of Us 1.
They're also so different.
Yeah, I haven't played The Last of Us 1 in like 7 years. I mean, I remember the story perfectly well, but just having not played it and then not really like comparing it. I mean, I kind of critique the game as like, like its own thing instead of, like you said, also comparing it against the two. I mean, I loved it. I thought the tone of this one was way better, and I mean, it was obviously my game of the year last year because, I mean, shit, I played like 45 hours of it within the span of like 5 real-time days. So, like, I mean, I put a ton of time into it, and I loved it, and it was actually the thing that made me buy a PlayStation again. So, I'll give it props for that.
Yeah, yeah. I also, yeah, like the tone. This game, gotta say, I would say unquestionably the darkest, most depressing game that I have ever played.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
And not only just the
Easily,
story, it's
easily.
like the cinematography and like the audio and everything is just
yeah,
depressing.
it's unsettling, really.
Yeah.
Like, but
The whole thing, yeah.
yeah. But what about you, Parker? I know, or actually, hold up, John. How about you? Because I know Parker, you just recently played it. So, John, go.
Yeah,
How
I
about
want to
you?
get. Yeah, I'm interested to see what Parker will say because my initial thoughts and general thoughts, like it took me a while, I feel like, to form a legitimate opinion on the game because when everything went down, I was like, who who do I like? Like it's hard to even pinpoint a protagonist in this game. But honestly, this is one of the greatest games I've ever played, easily top 10. Um, I didn't compare it to, well, actually, yes, I did compare it directly to The Last of Us 1 because I played the game. I
Right before,
replayed The Last
yeah.
of Us 1 right before it. Um, so I did have some comparisons, but without spoiling too much, because I think we'll talk about it. I still think I like the first game because I think it really says something when a game can just totally stand alone. In The Last of Us 2, you need part one to be able to understand part two. That doesn't say, I mean, that's just for me. I think The Last of Us 1 is better just because it can stand alone. But uh, The Last of Us 2 is incredible. My initial thoughts and general thoughts were just that it was beautiful. It felt like watching a TV show the entire time. Um, it's a beautiful game. The sound design is incredible. The acting is incredible. The directing is top notch. I mean, you're not going to get a better written story, it seems like, from anyone other than like Neil Druckmann. Like this guy has put together two games that could be considered TV shows, and if they were, they would be the best thing on TV easily. And I think it's eventually storytelling through video games will be such a big thing that everyone has a console to be able to watch the next game, you know, or play the next game and see, uh, how the story unfolds with these things. But The Last of Us is in a league of its own for now. The Last of Us 2 especially. But I could talk all day about my thoughts on The Last of Us. So Parker, why don't you give your thoughts having just finished it?
Yeah, so honestly, when I started playing The Last of Us 2, I was we just went over 2 weeks ago The Last of Us 1, so I kind of relived that all over again. So my expectations going into this game were like that it would be just as groundbreaking, if not more groundbreaking than the first game, because I just know how Naughty Dog's gonna be calculated. Uh, Hollywood couldn't write a better script, honestly. Like, it's just
Right.
it's just absolutely calculated in every step and measure of the game to make you feel a certain way, to throw you off. There's plot twists that they throw in just to make you feel one way, and then they completely flip it around and take you the other way. So that's just something I expected going into the game. But there are a lot of things I think The Last of Us 2 did way better than the first game. I thought they went a lot more in depth. I feel like they threw you a lot more curveballs in The Last of Us 2, which they didn't in the first game. They took you on way more of an emotional roller coaster in the second game, which I feel like is absolutely like necessary and I kind of expected, honestly. Just because I felt like they were going to go balls to the walls with this one. Um, but overall, the game is beautiful. first of all, like holy shit. Second of all, like the acting and the voice and the just the characters themselves just develop really well over the game, and actually like you can relate to the characters and have legitimate feelings, unlike a bunch of other games out there. So my impressions going into this one were very high. I had very high expectations, and honestly, The Last of Us 2 completely delivered on those expectations.
Yeah, and like I want to also add, like I'm not gonna hold this from anyone. I think this game is a 10 out of 10. But I will say I do think compared to the first, because I think the first game is flawless in terms of like I wouldn't change anything or like I wouldn't like put something up to debate. Even though I think this game is a 10 out of 10, I think there are some things that I would maybe do differently, or maybe like I think this game does have some issues if you like really dive into it compared to the first game. But I think also this game pushes a lot more boundaries compared to the first, so I think it balances out. But let's kind of, I guess from there, I want to pull the timeline back before this game came out or before any of us played it. I want to ask a few things. First, like, you know, after beating The Last of Us Part 1, did you guys want a sequel? What, you know, and if you did want a sequel, what did you think the sequel would be about? Because I think I can say for everyone here that if we were theory crafting in our head what the second game would be about, I don't think any of us would have landed on what this was.
Yeah, I kind of just trusted Naughty Dog to like do it right, you know? Like I feel like there wasn't any way they could mess it up. Like they could fully interpret it their own way, and I feel like you could still enjoy it no matter what, as long as they didn't like fuck up the story, which there's no way they really can.
But before you went into it, what did you I guess did you want a sequel, Parker? And like what did, like, before you started it, like you must have probably thought like, oh, I think this is what the game is going to be about, right?
Honestly, I really went in just with no expectations of anything. Like I knew that Naughty Dog was kind of gonna get it right, and they were gonna make it absolutely an insane emotional roller coaster, no matter what. So I kind of just went in without any expectations, just like knowing it was gonna be a good game. I did want a sequel, definitely, after playing the first. I believe it was like junior year of high school or senior year of high school, I played The Last of Us 1, and I immediately wanted a sequel. Like, can we get one like 3 months from now, please? Like, like, dude, it's just such a good game that I'm already thinking about the third one. You know, it's
Yeah.
Naughty Dog. I just knew there was no way they could mess it up unless they really tried.
Yeah, and like for my opinion on that, like I will say for the longest time after the first game, I didn't think there needed to be a second game. Because I was like, you know, if they ended it there, if The Last of Us was a one-off, that was a damn good one-off. And even when they announced the second game, I was like, do we need, like, I mean, like, I'm gonna play the shit out of it, but like, do we need it? And I will say, like, before the game came out, obviously I thought I had a feeling Joel was gonna die, which we'll get into. But I wasn't really sure where the game was going to go. I thought if something like that would happen, it would happen like at the end of the game kind of thing. And then they actually had a trailer back in 2018. I don't know if you guys know this, where that sequence where Abby's being hung in the forest, that entire like little sequence, that was a trailer that they released in 2018. But they didn't say who that was. It was just here's the scene. Here's this random scene. And a lot of people back then, which is funny to say, a lot of people, when they saw that trailer, they thought that was Ellie's mom. And I was kind of on that boat too, like, oh, okay, there's gonna be like a non-linear story, like maybe it'll be like a prequel and a sequel, and it'll like, you know, like maybe we'll see like Ellie's mom and see like what happened with her, maybe like she was immune too. So that's what I was thinking maybe the story was gonna be about. But obviously, I guess I wasn't wrong about the non-linear storytelling, but I was dead wrong about who the fuck Abby was in that trailer. But
Yeah, The Last of Us 2 jumps all over the place on the time map. Like,
yeah,
totally.
yeah, it is completely like non-sequential compared to the first game. But John or Andrew, either one of you guys, jump in. Like, wanted a sequel. What did you think it was going to be?
I did want a sequel, but like I said, I think The Last of Us 1 stands really, really well on. When I first found out that there was going to be a sequel made, I had no idea what to expect, but I had a feeling that obviously Ellie was going to find out about what went down at the hospital. I think we all figured that was going to happen with the sequel. And I knew that there were going to be some ramifications with that. So I think I was on the right track. But the way that Neil Druckmann put this together and the way that the story came about, it was not at all how I expected it. Especially, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about everything. But when you play as Abby for half the damn game, I was like, dude, I never would have expected that in a million years. Like, they had some balls to make you do that, because initially you hate Abby, and I had no idea who she was in the trailer either. I thought it was just like a scene to kind of show off the visuals of the game. Maybe it was just like Ellie would show up to that scene and like save the day. That's kind of what I figured when I saw the trailer. Also, some of the initial trailers showed Joel as an old man in scenes where like he wasn't an old man.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like they totally
The
threw you
flashback
off, and
scenes. Yeah.
yeah, the flashback scenes made you feel like that was going to be the game, like Joel was going to be in the game a lot more. But when you actually play the game, he has short hair and stuff.
Yeah.
So Naughty Dog threw us for loops. And I know there were some leaks too. I think we were going to get into that. But Andrew, what were your initial thoughts and what did you kind of expect from A Last of Us 2?
I mean, I knew there was going to be a sequel after playing The Last of Us 1, because when him and Ellie are driving away, like you can't just end a new IP with just like them driving away from like the main exposition of the game. So I mean, I knew it was coming, and honestly, until late 2019 or whenever the last delay was, I honestly forgot that this game was even coming out, just because I wasn't like heavy into PlayStation still. Like I kind of fell off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I like forgot it was even coming. But I mean, I'm glad I ended up getting a PS4 to play it, just because I mean, I feel like this is a series that I'm very interested in, just because it's like those like apocalyptic type games are super interesting to me. So I really wanted a sequel. I didn't know really what to expect from a sequel. I mean, I assume like, Joel and Ellie would be in it, which they are. I mean, Joel obviously looking at over John's shoulder, because this is a visual medium. We can see that Joel didn't last very, oh, there you go. Joel didn't last very long, but I mean, I'm glad to see them expand the franchise to include all these new characters like Abby and Lev and all of them. I think it made it really interesting, and I'm glad they did what they did. But yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, but I was genuinely surprised at most of the stuff that happened, which was nice.
Yeah, so I wanted to just kind of get a gauge of so who got spoiled here? Because I got spoiled.
I didn't.
Okay, John, you didn't get
I
spoiled.
did.
Nope.
And Andrew, you got spoiled. So I don't know if so. This has to be talked about in terms of like the conversation of this game, because it set up a lot of the discourse for what the conversation was around this game when it first came out. Essentially in April, this game came out in June 2020. It was supposed to come out in May 2020, but in April, the certain stuff like things from the plot leaked, specifically the opening Jackson scene, all of the Jackson level, and the level list of the game. And there was incorrect things in that, but there were also correct things. Let me just say some of the correct things that were in that leak. Abby, you play as Abby. Abby kills Joel. Joel dies very early on in the game. I'm looking over right now. He's about to get his head smashed in. But there is some other things that were not true also in that leak. One of them being that Abby kills Ellie. Another being that Abby is a trans person. These were not true. And sadly, some of that Abby stuff was used as like very toxic conversation points. Specifically her being trans, which look, I can get why people would think that, but like it's not true. And then, but yeah, like people were just shitting on the game like left and right after those leaks came out. I'll say what I got leaked for me. I got leaked that Joel died. And then I also got leaked to some extent that you play as Abby. So when you play as Abby in Jackson, I thought that's what they were referring to. And then Andrew, I remember I talked to you, and I think, yeah, you and me both talked to each other about how we knew Joel was going to die.
I knew. The only thing I got spoiled on was that he died and how he died. I didn't really. After
Golf?
that, I didn't really.
Golf.
I was between a mix of like staying away from further leaks and just flat out not seeing him. Like I never heard anything about like Abby being trans or you playing as Abby. I didn't know.
I remember muting a bunch of words on Twitter.
Yeah, I had to mute words.
Yeah. And then Parker, I'm guessing, yeah, you didn't.
It wasn't on my
know.
Twitter feed. I don't know, man. You guys must be following different accounts than me because I didn't get spoiled.
Yeah, and then I guess I wanted to ask, like, knowing, to me, I'm trying to figure out how I would even word this. Like, do you think that Naughty Dog could have done anything to avoid essentially all of the negative conversation coming into this game? The only thing I could think of, and this is like kind of, it would have been a cool turn, like twist in marketing, was like, I was like, what would have been cool if maybe when they revealed The Last of Us 2, instead of focusing so much on Ellie in marketing, like what if they tried to play it off in marketing as like, oh, this is a new story with new characters, and all the marketing was just focusing on Abby's side. And everyone would be like, okay, so this is, we're not doing Joel and Ellie anymore. We're a new slate of characters, new everything. And then maybe the twist would have been when you started playing the game that Ellie and Joel are in the game and what Abby's relationship is then. I think that would have been a cool little marketing twist. But yeah, what do you guys think? I feel like there is, but with the actual leaks, I don't know if there was a way out of it, especially when you read something like that completely out of context of the story, and half of it is like wrong. I don't know what you can do. Like, even, I don't know if you guys know this, John, I don't know if you know this, but the Avengers Endgame plot leaked a few months before the movie came out, and everyone was also in the same boat. Like us, whoever read it, were like, "Oh, this is stupid. Hulk and Bruce are the same, and like, I don't know, like they killed Thanos in the first 5 minutes, like all this stuff. Like everyone was shitting on it, being like, no way, this is the real script. No way. Like this is some horse shit. No way it's real. This looks like a shit post. Lo and behold, movie comes out. That is the plot, and I don't think anyone has a problem with the plot of Endgame, but like obviously it's not my favorite, but that's a different story. But yeah, thoughts on the leaks? Could they have avoided it? John, Andrew?
I think in general, if a game's going to be hyped up for years in advance, I think there's always going to be that initial criticism, especially if the plot leaks. Regardless of if the leaks are true or not, people are going to start speculating. They're going to start making comparisons when they play the game to the leaks. I think in general, leaks are just a terrible thing. I wish it didn't happen as much, but I don't think that Naughty Dog really could have avoided the initial backlash, because I think it's a human nature kind of thing to compare. And people are going to compare the game to the leaks. And I think it's unfortunate that some of them were right, but this game is so deep and there's so much to it that even if we knew exactly what would happen, exactly all the major plot points, I'd want to see how it unfolds. So I don't think Naughty Dog could have really done anything to avoid it. I do think it would have been interesting if they spun it off like there's a new cast of characters, because that was one of my thoughts on what The Last of Us 2 could be. I thought maybe it would be in the same time frame as the first game, but just different characters. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, they'd probably meet up with Ellie and Joel in some way. But what did you guys think? Maybe Parker?
Yeah, I think not. I don't think there's anything Naughty Dog can really do about people speculating. I mean, it's really more of a societal problem, to be honest with you. Like the people are when people
overhype.
Yeah, just overhyping it or just making out the actual plot line to be something shitty when it's something that can actually be beneficial for the game. Like when you actually get the context behind it. So I just feel like spoiling stuff for other people is just ridiculously stupid. Don't do it. Just kind of ignore what people are saying about the game. Just play it for yourself and just play the whole thing first and then gather your thoughts. Or else you're just speculating and you could be giving out like completely incorrect information. So I think it's more of a societal problem. Naughty Dog's just kind of the brunt of the whole conversation. It's really nothing they can do about that.
I think it's just like a general thing. Like, I mean,
fandoms.
Speaking generally, like anytime a big franchise has anything, I mean, there's going to be people that like intentionally try to shit on it to make it like fail just because they don't like it. And I think for this game, especially with Naughty Dog being as big and this game being as hyped, I mean, I feel like it was just like, it just kind of like shows how like shitty and toxic like Twitter is in general. Because I mean, look at like, go on like any PlayStation tweet, any Nintendo tweet, and you see this asshole as the very first reply, fucking Mohammed Anib or whatever the fuck his name is. And this dude is like, he's still making fun of The Last of Us 2 and it's been out for like a year and a month, dude. Like give it a rest, bro.
Yeah.
It's just like the whole like troll culture on Twitter is like so much more
obsessed.
present on like video games. Like it like
I think they're still stuck on the leaks.
Yes.
They still call Abby trans.
This dude, this Muhammad dude tweets like every other day is like, and goes on like any PlayStation tweet. He's like, Last of Us 2, awful game. Like, dude, okay, it's been out for a year. Give it a rest, bro. Like, I think it just emasculates like the entire like shittiness of the internet and Twitter towards like game developers and stuff. Just because I feel like for whatever reason, video games as a genre, like their creative minds in that industry get shit on more than like any other industry in existence. I mean, like, I mean, I can, the biggest thing I can think of from the movie sphere is like Arsenal, what you said, like the end game spoilers, but then like just like
or Last Jedi even.
Yeah, just like the whole Star Wars thing. Like that's the only thing I can think of in movies. And then music is pretty like, I mean, it's pretty subjective, yeah. But then like video games, like, dude, like developers get like death threats and like it's terrible. And I don't know why it's just video games.
Yeah. Imagine like putting your fucking blood, sweat, and tears into this game and then like everything that happened with this game before launch. Like, well, and it's being like a developer and sitting there and
it's when it's like, it's when it's like not warranted, especially because like The Last of Us, like people were shitting on it before it even came out. And then you have on
the user score on Metacritic.
You have it on the opposite side of the coin. You have like Cyberpunk where everybody was hyped for it to come out. Yeah. And then it was actually awful. And then people target the devs, even though it's like higher up management. And it's I mean, it's pretty sad, but just the way it goes, I guess.
Yeah, like that was the worst thing about the leaks to me is also like it just set up like an uneven playing field. Instead of all coming in, seeing this thing, experiencing it together, there's a bunch of people who supposedly knew what was going to happen and were ready to fucking destroy this game when it came out. Like, I don't know if you guys remember when this game launched, the user score on Metacritic was like a flat 1.
Yeah,
Like, because
I do
everyone that
remember
was
that.
ready, like, think everyone that was ready to shit on this game flew to the fucking page and gave it a 1 out of 10. And I mean, now you look at it and it's evened out a little more, and it's like a 5.9, I think, or a 6.
There should be
But
some sort of verification where you have to have the game in
Yeah.
order to put a user score. There should be some sort of verification method.
yeah, and that game, it's funny because that game has more user scores than any other game on Metacritic by like a very large margin. Like probably second place has like 30,000, 40,000. This game has like 150,000 like votes.
That's insane.
And it's just like, and like that's the like the shittiest part about it is like so many people you can see on the internet came into this game ready to hate it, like ready, like seeing the leaks, like just like, like you can even see, like, I'm gonna use someone as an example, like an influencer, PewDiePie. Dude, that he fucking, like, I watched some of his playthrough, like key moments. Dude hated the game from first chapter. He like, I think John, like, I know you watch PewDiePie, so like you can probably attest to that. But like it seemed like so many people were already on the boat of like, yeah, this game is shit. And I feel like
a Critical's review, absolutely ridiculous.
yeah,
That thing was shit.
I feel like
Stinky.
every like popular YouTuber, just like this, The Last of Us, like they knew
they
that
jumped on the
needed-
hate train.
Yes, they knew that they needed the content and the clicks, so they jumped on the hate train. Because like Critical's review, like I watched it after I played the game, and it was like the most brain dead arguments ever. Like it was a terrible review.
Yeah.
Like he focused on like so many small things, and I didn't watch the PewDiePie one, but I assume he probably focused on really small nitpicky bullshit instead of actually caring about the story like Critical did.
I just don't understand how there were so many people that were upset with what Joel did. And then The Last of Us 2 comes out and everyone's sucking Joel's cock. And everyone's so upset that he dies so soon.
well, you know what?
I think that was such a ballsy move.
Yeah. Let's, go ahead and start diving to the game, because Joel's death is going to be coming up pretty soon. And, that is going to be a big conversation, I think. I'm at the Neve. What is it? Okay, so I want to get this stuff out of the way first. Kind of more general things that are not as maybe, conversationable in terms of like, I think these are a lot more like objective, like this game is good at these things. The graphics, holy shit. This game looks like a PS5 game. And I will still say that I think the facial animations in this game are still the best of any game. Maybe overall graphics, maybe that's up for debate now, but this game looks absolutely gorgeous, and I cannot wait to see what Naughty Dog does for their first PS5 game, because that's just gonna look like real life at that point. But I think the graphics are phenomenal, and then I also want to touch on my opinions on the gameplay. I think this game has a lot of subtle but very great improvements to gameplay compared to The Last of Us Part 1. The improvements to stealth, where you can go prone now. The levels are way bigger. They're like, you can like borderline get lost in some of these areas. Like, there's a lot of flexibility. Like when I played through the games the second time, almost no combat encounter like went exactly the same way. Like there are some fights, okay, this time I'm going stealth, or this time I'm using this weapon, or I'm going this route. Like there's a lot of flexibility, and the way they set up the combat encounters, they're always so intense. Like, you can get caught, kill someone, run through some like wall, like go through like a small hole in a wall, like go back into cover, start hiding, and there's like, there are enemies all over the place, and it's not easy to tell like what their patterns are, and it feels like an actual like fight for like survival, which I love. And they make the AI in this game like very lifelike, you know, where they're calling each other out by name, like they're calling each other's names out. And you know, they'll freak out or they'll get angry when like maybe one of their friends dies. And like there's a lot of dynamicness with the combat. And I'm gonna say I think this game has the best third person like shooter gameplay out of any game besides like Metal Gear Solid 5. So makes me very excited for Factions, but we'll get into that. Yeah, what did you guys think of like the graphics and the gameplay?
Yeah, so I wanted to get in the graphics because my God, the CenturyLink field, or what did they call it in the game? Like the Sun, whatever, something stadium, but where everybody's camping out. I think it's all WLF soldiers. But that place looks beautiful. It actually looks like the real life CenturyLink field in Seattle. And oh my goodness, it is just the most bright. The color is bar none. And the, like Arcel said, the facial graphics are some of the best I've ever seen. Like it looked like they actually recorded the scene with a camera. Like it was like I was watching a movie. So that makes me really want to see this game in 4K. Like hopefully a remaster on a PS5, or if I can, I don't even want to buy a PS5, but I might have to for this, just for this game.
Naughty Dog.
Yeah, dude. It's just the graphics in this game are bar none to anything else I've ever played.
Imagine seeing at 60 FPS, guys. Yeah, I gotta say that I played this game at 4K 60 FPS. Holy shit. It looks so good and it plays so good. It's amazing. It looks so it's essentially the PS5 patch is essentially the remaster, but oh god. When you get, if I can show you guys the chance, or Andrew or someone, like you gotta see this game in 60 4K. It looks amazing.
I'm gonna probably do my second playthrough when I get a PS5.
Yeah.
Wait till then, but
yeah, I wanted to get in the gameplay as well. I thought it was very similar to the first game in terms of like how everything controls, how you pick things up, how you interact with the world, but I feel like it was just a lot smoother and a lot more better executed in the second game. Like the AI in this game is so crazy intelligent. It just, you could barely brush, like you could knock over a jar or something and that would set off the enemies to come after you. Like it is so realistic. Like when Naughty Dog was creating the AI in this game and like the combat interactions, they really wanted to make you feel like you were in a real life battle. Like they wanted to they didn't want the game to feel like a video game at all. They wanted everything to feel like you're in real life. They wanted it to be as immersive as possible, which makes me respect the hell out of this game. That shows me that there's a bunch of thought and a lot of time taken. Like just think about every little detail. Where can we make it feel a little bit more realistic to the player here? So that's impressive. I've never played a game like that in my life, where it feels like you can interact with everything like it's in real life, other than the invisible walls and stuff, but you can't really do anything about that.
And I want to add on to like what Parker's saying. Like there's people out there who are like, Naughty Dog games have bad gameplay. And I'm like, what? I'm like, compare this to any other third person shooter? Like, I don't know, like GTA, Gears of War, anything. It's literally
bad gameplay compared to what?
Yeah. The other games are literally press X to hide behind a box, pop your head out, and fucking shoot people. Like this is like a cat and mouse. Like you have to constantly be thinking on your toes, like in terms of like what you're doing and what's going on. Like I don't know. People are fucking stupid. That's all I have to say. But John, Parker, if you're done, John or Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the graphics obviously are insane. And I can't get over the fact that my PS4 was pushing 7 years old when I first played this, and it looked as good as it did. I mean, this game looks next gen and was a perfect swan song for the PS4. And maybe a third game will be the swan song for the PS5, and it'll look like better than real life. I don't know, but that's where we're heading because this game is insane. And what they were able to pull off with 7-year-old hardware is just ridiculous. The sound design, I think, is some of the best. I would almost put Gustavo in the same category as John Williams. Like, dude, this man is a genius, straight up.
Yeah.
The sound design, the graphics, and everyone in the game, even the AI. And this was a complaint with the first game. One minute complaint, maybe it was 2013, a curse of the time, but the AI wasn't very smart in the first game. The AI feels so human in this game, and with the dialogue and stuff that's going on constantly, you almost start to feel bad when you're killing people. And there's points where you have to kill dogs and you hear the owner's reaction to the dog dying, and the owner's like, oh my gosh, Alice, or whatever. No, like, it's terrible. It makes everything feel so human and so real, and that everything you do in the game has consequence. It's just, there's nothing else like it. And I don't think we're going to get anything else quite like it until a sequel or the next Naughty Dog game.
The combat is like set. Everything in this game is set up to like either make you feel like depressed or anxious. The combat in this game, you're like always anxious in terms of like
even the death animations, like even those are like, even with how you die, it actually has a different death animation depending on like if you're standing up, if you're laying down, if you're like facing a certain way. Like it's totally realistic.
What about you, Andrew?
I thought the gameplay was a nice like natural evolution. So when I got my PS4 last year before this game came out, I ended up playing like in this order. I played Uncharted 2 and then Uncharted 4 and then The Last of Us 2. So I had like the very nice like evolution of Naughty Dog gameplay. And as much as I hate like remasters and ports all the time, like if they remade the first game with the engine of the second game, it would be insanely beautiful and it would be a dream to play, because like the Naughty Dog engine they use starting in Uncharted 4 is just like so buttery smooth and so satisfying to do like everything in. Like the shooting combat, like the melee combat, all that stuff is just so nice. And having it in The Last of Us 2 really made it great. I mean, graphically, it's an insanely beautiful game. I mean, even when I was playing it the first time on a PS4, putting out at 1080p, I mean, God, it looked so amazing. Like even just like showing off how they can make 1080p like look so good in a game is insane. And I think now, since I've played like a few parts.
You played like
game.
every Naughty Dog game now, Andrew. I feel
like. I still haven't finished Uncharted 1, but we're getting there. But
might I add though, really quick, it never dropped from 30 frames on PS4.
It didn't. I never had it drop. But I played a couple parts of the game on the PS5 4K 60. And like, holy shit, dude, like it's so insane on the PS5 now. Like it's even like like you said, Arso, like that patch is like the remaster basically. Like it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And then the last part, the soundtrack, my God, I listen to the soundtrack like weekly. It's so good. Like the WLF, oh, that theme is so good. Like I listen to that all the time. I have like a cinema and game playlist on Spotify and Apple Music, and like, dude, I specifically go and like pick that one out like every time to start it off. It's just so good,
dude.
It's insane.
It sounds
on
like
me.
It what is it? The WLF song. It sounds like something out of Blade Runner.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it does.
The like,
which is funny because like the Last of Us 2 world and Blade Runner like complete opposites, but like the sound design is so similar in some parts.
I'll be surprised if Gustavo doesn't start directing sound design for big movies.
He
honestly, he's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I bet he'll do the TV show.
He'll do the TV show for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, I liked how in the soundtrack they introduced more like electronic music as well. Like I felt like it added to some of creepiness of it. Like, and yeah, Gustavo, like with like specifically like the opening song, like the ending song, that what is that track, The Obsession, that constantly plays throughout Ellie's part of the game, like the like it's like that's like to me the main theme of the game. But Andrew, yeah, what do you like you can probably agree with me on this, where you can like really see the progression, like even from like The Last of Us, like if you play Uncharted 4, you can kind of see, oh, they kind of took some things from The Last of Us, because like, you know, in
Yeah.
Uncharted you can like hide in the bushes and like there's more stealth. And then in this, it's like, oh, you can see where they took from Uncharted 4, because you know, like the rope shit, like
Yeah,
especially in
yeah.
Uncharted 4, like
Oh yeah, the grappling hook in Uncharted 4 was like insane, and then that they brought that into this game is even better.
yeah. Can we talk about how good ropes look like in this game? It's like
I was gonna
rope
say the
physics,
same
bro.
thing. Ridiculous. They're real. It's like a real rope.
And I don't
Yeah.
want to like veer too far off track, but going back to graphics, like, dude, I think 2020, the releases in 2020, like Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us 2, like set Sony as like the like obvious like front runner in the graphics department in all video games. Like both of those games look so beautiful, and especially with their PS5 and PS4 Pro patches. Like, dude, both of those games look incredible. Like as close to real life as I've ever seen video games get. And I think both of them together like just set Sony like on such a higher echelon than Microsoft and, well, obviously Nintendo. But
But hey,
It'd be
Nintendo games
crazy
look
to see
beautiful
those
too.
games on PC. It'd be
Yeah.
crazy to see like an 8K ultra setting Last of Us 2. I don't think we will for a really long
Remember,
time.
I
but
mean, like shit.
You gotta
remember
love you gotta love seeing Breath of the Wild, a release title, going like 15 FPS, but keep it Arsenal.
yeah. Like, and they're able to hold 30 FPS like on base PS4 like throughout this game is insane. And it's like the same thing we were saying about Last of Us 1. I remember when I played Last of Us 1, I was like, oh, there's no way anything's gonna look better than this. And then I play, and then I play Uncharted 4, and I'm like, oh, no, nothing's gonna look better than this. And then I play, and then it just keeps
Naughty
getting
Dog
better.
and Insomniac, they just go back and forth.
the two best AAA developers by far.
You don't think Nintendo?
It's crazy.
Well, I mean,
It's harder. Yeah,
it's hard to compare because, like, I mean, obviously Nintendo isn't really big in the graphics. Like, they make their games look good, but they still look very animated and cartoony. But I mean, Insomniac and Naughty Dog have just like set themselves like story and graphics department and sound department are like all three, like they're undisputably the top two developers in the world right now.
And Easter eggs. They always
Yeah.
have the best Easter eggs in their games.
Insomniac has risen to prominence so much in the past like 3 years. It's insane. Like,
dude,
with
and shout out Insomniac for always putting reversible covers in their games.
Yeah, and they've put out literally they put out 3 games in like the past 2-3 years.
And
They
they
put out
all
two
they all
bangers.
look amazing, and they're all great games.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. But I think now we can start talking about the game's story.
All right, an hour and 20 minutes later, we can get into the game.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. So
A ton.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Podcasts and web shows are on the rise, and for good reason. They're great sources of entertainment and can be great listens in multitudes of situations like long drives or intense study sessions. Maybe, just maybe, you have an idea for a show or podcast that you want to put out into the world. Well, lucky for you, it's never been easier to jump into podcasting thanks to the wonderful people at Anchor.fm. Anchor takes care of most of the back-end work of podcasts. No more are the days of coordinating releases on multiple platforms, paying for a podcast hosting subscription to hold your RSS feed, or other hassles. Anchor sets up your podcast on all the major podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple automatically. They even provide sleek and easy-to-use editing tools that can be accessed from your phone or computer to get your podcast to the world through the path of least resistance. Anchor also matches you up with sponsors so that you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. and even gives you in-depth stats for your shows like total plays, regions of viewership, as well as what kind of devices your show is being listened on. Here's the best part about all of this. It's free. So what are you waiting for? Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. If you're ready to add your voice and vision to the mix, it's never been easier. And I highly recommend you go the way of Anchor.fm, just like the ControllerCast did. So here you go. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. That's Anchor.fm.
All right, so now finally, we can dive into. I feel like everything before this point was essentially like our non-spoiler like review of the game, but now we can start talking about the story. So, and there is a lot to talk about here. So, we start off the game actually in a recap of the first game by Joel. The first shot of the game worth pointing out is the guitar with the moth on it, I think, and essentially like Joel is telling Tommy what happened at the Firefly Hospital. I was supposed to take you to Fireflies and walk away. And it's interesting, I think, how he sets up this entire conversation because he's not like, oh, I killed those people and I got out of there. It's like, when Tommy's like, like what happened? He's just like, I saved her, and that's how he always that's how he always frames any conversation. It's never like I got rid of the cure to humanity or anything. It's always like I saved her. And then you get the final Joel playable sequence, that beautiful ride, that horse ride up into Jackson. And then essentially, that's kind of the title sequence. We get like, the opening credits essentially. And
Future days.
Yeah. Oh,
Play
yeah.
the guitar.
And then we cut to the Future Days scene, which Joel finally lives up to his promise from the first game and sings Ellie a song and does Future Days. And like John, I know you have some history with Future Days.
Yeah,
but,
great song. Yeah, it's a Pearl Jam hit, and it kind of like sets the tone for the entire rest of the game. Like it's a perfect theme song for the game.
Mm-hmm.
It literally says, if I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. And that's kind of the story of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, essentially you can tell also from that first conversation that Ellie, things seem a little off with Ellie. So like this is essentially picking up like right after the ending scene of the first game. So like she's a little on edge, a little hesitant. But yeah, you had that. It's a little bit of an awkward interaction, but like I think intentionally so. And then he leaves and we get the title. Last was part 2. And then from there we see a jump to 5 years later. A lot similar to the first game. We get like a time jump right at the beginning. Instead of Joel jumping out of bed, it's Ellie this time. And first character we're introduced to is my man Jesse. Jesse is a G for however long he's in the game. Just I love his line when they're talking at the door where she tells him that her and Dina kissed, and he's just like, what does he say? He's like, I'm just playing meh. like he's like meh. I'm just playing meh. But then you kind of get a walkthrough of Jackson. You see like how much more developed it is, at least from like how far you could see it from the first game.
It's a legitimate town at this point.
Yeah. And you go through the town and you get those steak sandwiches from Seth. And you keep going and you come across Dina. And then that's where you kind of get a little tutorial in terms of a little mini tutorial in terms of gameplay with the snowball fight. I will say right off the bat, like I noticed right away how good the script is in this game with like the conversation between Ellie and Dina. It feels like normal conversation as opposed to like something out of a story or like a written down script. and then they they ride off to do their little patrol, and that's when we get the first switch of the game where you play as Abby.
You play as girl
Yes,
or
you play as
woman and man.
Yeah, you play as woman and man, and essentially, and feel free to jump in at any point. But we also get introduced to Owen at this point. They're walking through the snow area, and you can tell at this point they're trying to get to Jackson, and they're trying to find somebody. It's very vague, but that's all they're kind of leaving it up to. It's like, is he there? How are we going to get him out? That's a lot of people. How are we going to get in? And I gotta say it, like, we'll talk about Owen more. I think Owen is like an extremely underrated character in this game. I love Owen. You can tell there's some history with Abby and Owen just right off the get-go. They had something going on at some point, but now, like, they talk about like Mel's pregnant, and there's a lot just character setup right here that's going to come back way later. But and you also get a little glimpse of Abby's fear of heights when they cross that ledge at the very beginning of the game. But and then it just keeps going really until it's kind of switching back and forth between her and Ellie. And then Ellie goes to they're doing their search, and you come across like the infected. The first like 5 hours of this game is, I don't know if you guys noticed, is purely infected encounters. You don't fight humans until like probably 5 hours into the game. And they find that basement with the weed and the crash smash Bandy Scooch.
Dude, the first time I saw that, I was like, what
Cooch.
the I was like, God damn. Also, I want to say one quick note on Owen. I think he is the most underrated character because throughout the whole game, he's like constantly keeping everybody's like things get like super heated, and he's always there to like calm it down and like wrangle everybody back in and think rationally. So I think
besides being in the middle of a love triangle constantly, I think Owen is one of the most like level-headed people in the world.
He keeps everybody cool when shit hits the fan. I've known
there are a couple love triangles in this game, but
2 love triangles. Yep.
Yes.
Dina, Jesse, and Ellie.
Let's talk about Ellie and Dina indulging in the devil's lettuce.
The devil's lettuce, and then post that they have some fun, and Jesse walks in on him too.
Yeah. like Jesse's so
you get
funny
the first
in this
thing that'll trigger any homophobic people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's something we're talking about with this scene. Is like people's potential or not even potential, people's upsetness or anger with the fact that Naughty Dog is pushing a quote unquote homosexual homosexual agenda. I don't know. I think that it's dumb. Like you can talk about this whole game without mentioning that Ellie's a lesbian. And
yeah, exactly.
Well, the other thing is like video games and storytelling in general just like move along with the times you're in. So like, I mean, think about this. When the last game came out, gay marriage wasn't even fucking legal. It wasn't even legal. Like,
that's insane.
It wasn't even federally legal to have gay marriage. Like and people that don't want to progress with the times will obviously get mad at like when games and movies and music progress with the times, because that's just how it goes. And some people just want to keep their closed-minded thinking. And I think the whole thing, like you said, Arcel, about at the start of the game, or before the game came out, when people were mad that there was like a transgender character in the game, like, so what? Who gives a shit? Just play the game.
And they were wrong.
Yeah, they were wrong.
And they were wrong on who it was.
Yeah.
Which is the funniest part. And it's like the controversy that comes out of games and movies being like, oh, that's too PC and woke. It's like, no, you're just closed-minded and a fucking fool if you can't understand that games and media progress with the times. Because, oh, hey, guess what, man? Not everybody in the world is straight. And if there's more representation in games, I'm all for it, because there's some people like that were, I mean, just thinking not on like an LGBT basis, but like a race basis. Like there were people who were super excited for Miles Morales to be a main Marvel character because he's a black Spider-Man. Like people of color don't have a ton of representation in any media, and especially LGBT people don't have a lot of representation in media. So I think it was perfect that this game had that element in it. And I know like Left Behind had like kind of that
Set it
kind of
up,
like
yeah.
the starting like the foundation for that. But the fact that like a major game has like LGBT elements and like provides a representation for more people, I think that is fantastic by Naughty Dog to do. And for them to be able to get through that controversy and like not let it like, you know, really affect them, because I mean obviously they'll get hate from people who, you know, are like against like, oh, wokeness and video games. Like I play a video game to relax and get away from wokeness. Like, okay, well, being a lesbian and seeing a lesbian relationship is not being woke. Like
Exactly. It's human.
Yes.
It's human, and it adds such a human element to the game. Again,
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we gave a shout out to that because I think Naughty Dog knocks it out of the park in terms of representation. And like, look at the
Accessibility.
like the diversity in the cast. Like, it's not just white people like the first game. Like, there's Asian people and there's, you know, minorities of all kinds in this game, and it's awesome.
It's a very diverse cast.
Yes,
and that's
very.
worth giving a shout out to. And
Yeah,
also,
I also
go on,
wanted
go
to
on.
point out that on talking about like the representation, just because somebody doesn't look like you doesn't mean the video game company is pushing an agenda on you. Like,
Yeah.
that's such
know what
a
I mean?
silly
How do you
thought.
think
It's
these
so
minority
stupid.
groups have survived throughout all history without having representation in media? Like
Yeah.
oh, now like they act like there's no white people or straight people in the game. Like
the person in the video game must act like and look like me for me to like it. But
The only people that could possibly survive an apocalypse are white straight hicks.
yeah,
The only people.
so stupid, dude.
And also, while we're on the topic of this, like, also definitely 100,000% need to give Naughty Dog a shout out for the accessibility options in this game. If you are blind, you can play this entire game with because of the accessibility options. If you are deaf, if you have any sort of disability, you can play through this entire game and experience it and enjoy it. And people who are blind have played through this game and have enjoyed it and are able to talk about it and share it because
Holy shit.
Because the accessibility options in this game are literally so in depth that like it is hands down objectively the most accessible game in terms of its options.
it is. Have you seen the accessibility options list? Like, dude, it takes up your entire screen. It's massive. There's so many different things you can like tweak and mess with to make it more accessible to like any type of like situation you're in.
Like literally, if
I
you're
totally
blind,
forgot about that.
I did not even know that.
Like if you're blind, there's literally like an accessibility option that has like a sonar that like you can use to move around the environment, so you can like use that, you know, like it's it's crazy. Like,
well, and there's even like even for like people with just like not like fully blind but like legally blind, there's a mode where it just changes all the characters into extremely high contrast like polygons, and you play the whole game like with these super bright like shapes just moving around.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Holy
Insane.
shit. Yeah, props to Naughty Dog for a lot of things. They had balls to do a lot with the story, but they made this so accessible, and they just included a lot. Like there's so many human aspects to this game. You almost get the entire human experience in this one game. I just can't get over how human it all is.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And like, yeah, let's I mean, we're about to get to like a big talking point, but so like essentially Jesse comes in and he's like, we haven't seen Joel and Tommy, and what we know is because when we're on the Abby side of things, she runs into Joel, and Joel and her and Tommy escape, and you know, they're working together, and she's like, hey, let me take you back to where my group of people are. And when when they're first introducing each other, like when they're running away from the zombies, you can tell something's up because Abby's making some weird facial expressions and she's like, whoa, something's going on here. But yeah, so we know that they're going there, and it's essentially setting up the inciting incident of this entire game, which is this next scene. They get through the zombie horde, and they get back to the ski lodge, I believe, or something like that. And
it's like the wolves like outpost. It's just
Yeah.
like a huge log cabin that they just made into like
Yeah.
their hub.
And this scene, I gotta say, is so well directed in terms of, I don't know if you guys caught this, but from when they enter the lodge up until that scene ends, it's all one take. The camera doesn't cut. It follows them throughout the entire house into that room, that entire scene. And, now it's time to talk about it. This is, the big talking point, which is when Abby turns on Joel. They walk in and they're introducing themselves. They're like, hey, you guys could come back to town with us. We could patch up. My name's Tommy. And then he's like, and then, name's Joel. And everyone just in the room, ears perk up. Everyone's looking at him. And he's like, it's like, what does he say?
He's like, so you've heard of us.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like you guys have heard of us or something. And then camera just moves right to the left. And it's like, and Abby's just like, that's because they have. Blows his leg off. And then, oh my God, and that's just an insanely brutal scene. And they're cauterizing his leg, or tourniqueting his leg, not cauterizing it. Yeah, tourniqueting his leg. Yeah, what the fuck? They're tourniqueting his leg, and it's like, the music is super intense, the bass is blasting, and it's like,
whoa.
Yeah.
It's literally like that. It's like a slow heartbeat.
Yeah, and she's just like Joel Miller, and you can have an idea of maybe why she's pissed off at him, but that's the whole scene is super white knuckle. And then she grabs the golf club, the iconic golf club, and gives him a nice little whack across the face before it cuts to black. So, and then I'll talk about the next scene too.
Yeah, dude, look at. Speaking of spoilers, I mean, shit. Sony leaked the new Mario Golf game before it was even announced, dude. Shit.
Everybody loves golf, and I gotta say, I love those fucking golf memes. They're hilarious. And then obviously we get to the cabin as Ellie, and Ellie gets knocked down, and she walks into the room, and Joel's getting his fucking head smashed in essentially, and it's like, she's like begging Joel to get up, and Joel literally can't even say anything. He's just literally laying there, and then Abby kills him. And it's like essentially from that perspective, at that point, the sound cuts out. You don't really hear anything. It's just like ding, and you just see them arguing. You see everyone arguing with each other. You don't really know what's going on. And then, one of the guys, kicks Ellie, and she gets knocked out. And, we get confirmation that Joel is dead. But,
one final blow, one final drive to the face.
It's time to talk about this scene. This scene is constantly talked about. This is like where 50% of the discourse goes towards. Let's talk about this scene. What were your
Who caught tears? Who caught tears? I gotta ask. I caught tears from this scene.
You guys actually told me it was gonna happen, so I was fully expecting it, and at that point, I didn't shed a tear. Unfortunately,
I know Tana teared up. I teared up later on, but what were your first impressions like when Abby betrayed? Let's just talk about this scene. There's a lot to talk about.
I feel like we'll be able to explain more about like the motives of it later.
I mean,
I was pissed. My initial thoughts, I was pissed, dude. I was so mad at Abby.
Yeah,
I hated this hoe.
It made me like when I started playing as her, like I was like, why the fuck do I have to play as this bitch? Like, I did not like. For a lot of this game, I absolutely hated the shit out of Abby.
Forcibly running in and losing the combat encounters just to see Abby get killed.
And can we talk about how lucky Abby was to come across Joel? Like, holy fuck. It's like, it's one of those things where it's almost meant to be. Like,
Yeah,
that
it's
shit
like
was
it's like
supposed
somebody
to
wrote a
happen.
script and made it happen. It was insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. But everything else is so realistic and how it happened. That was the one part of the game where I was like, okay, like, come on.
Yeah, I'll
But
give it to you there too. with
for
that one.
for storytelling, obviously, like, they could have made that sequence a whole lot longer, but they didn't, and I think it played better for the story anyway, because Abby could have gone searching for Joel for like 6 hours of the game. We could have had to play for her as the first 6 hours, and she's searching for him. But they made it easy. But I was pissed, dude. I hated Abby, and that whole scene was so emotional. It got me in tears to see what was my favorite game of all time. The main character gets smacked in the face like that.
Joel and one.
Joel and one. And to see Ellie's reaction too, it was just like you really feel that father-daughter stuff. And as the game goes on, not to spoil too much, but the relationship that Joel and Ellie had at that time kind of makes it even more sad. But
Yeah, and like
but
I think, and I know like Neil Druckmann has talked about this, where the intention of that scene was very much they wanted to make the player angry slash upset slash shocked, and that's why I didn't tear up, because it was literally like yeah, like not like a bad yeah, but like like just like holy shit, like that was I wasn't expecting that to happen that soon.
Yeah, the
'Cause-
main question I had, like, after Joel died was like, did Ellie do everything she could to like apologize to Joel, or end it off on a good note with Joel, or like give him a proper goodbye? Like, that's the main question I was left with going on the rest of the game. Like, will we get more information later on if Ellie like talked to him right before that, or that's after that scene? That's the main thing I was wondering throughout the whole
yeah,
course.
and it's yeah, and yeah, like it's interesting because every flashback, every flashback changes your perception on the note that their relationship ended on. Like like every flashback, you're like at a completely different spot for like, okay, so this is the note there that things ended on for them. Obviously, up until the game, that thought is completely changing. But yeah, like it's like what do you guys think they did Joel dirty? Let's talk about that. Like what like what are your overall thoughts on this scene?
It was
Because I think
ballsy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Did you
think
guys
it was.
expect it this early? Like let's unpack this.
I thought, okay, because I got spoiled on it, like we said earlier. I thought it would happen a lot later in the game. Like, I thought it would be like the main, like, middle of the story, like, turning point. I didn't know it was, I didn't know it was going to be like the first hour of the game. He was going to get swacked.
yeah, you
Like-
figure something like that would be the climax of the story.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I don't know if he got done dirty. I think killing him off made such an impact that, like, I feel like Naughty Dog did it on purpose, knowing that like you would have a very emotionally charged like reaction to figuring out you have to play as Abby at some point. Like, I think that was like the intent. And I mean, obviously in a game like this, you have to make some kind of decision that, some major character has to
The
die.
inciting incident.
Yeah, you have to have something that like get you emotionally invested in the game. And I think doing it this early really like was able to hook people and be like, well, what the fuck are they even gonna do without Joel? Like, he was the main fucking dude in the last one, and with him gone, like, I mean, I remember I was like, well, I don't know how the fuck this is gonna go down.
Well, here's the thing people like to forget about. Joel fucked humanity. Joel fucked humanity's only chance. If there was one, he fucked it. And did he get what he deserved? I don't know. Maybe
this
that
is
was
what
the universe.
this is what like confuses me about this whole thing. It's like, dude, the whole topping point of the end of the first game, yeah, at the whole talking point at the end of the first game was, is what Joel did justified? Was it right? We've had so many conversations about this. You know, what was right, what was wrong, and that ambiguity of the ending of the first game. I'm so shocked that so many people went into this came out of this death scene being completely like almost for to me it seemed like forgetful of like the ending of the first game. Like everyone's like yeah, we could like I'm trying to figure out how to word. I feel like people lost the ambiguity of it, and like a lot of people were immediately on like the Joel did absolutely nothing wrong, train, which I think the point of the ending of the first game is for you to, and just like with this game, the point of the first game is for you to understand why he would make that choice, just like Abby later on in this game. But yeah, I don't get how. I feel like so many like I feel like that's such a confusing point. Like how I'm surprised people got this upset because I feel like a lot of people would have guessed that Joel would die in this game. And yeah, he didn't die in a heroic manner, but I feel like he died in a way that was fitting for how people die in this world. And like, I mean, fuck, nobody in this game has a good, like a heroic death. Think about everyone that dies in this game. It's never some like great, it's never great. No one, and even in the first game, no, there's no heroic ending or badass ending for anyone. Like, so I felt like it went totally in line, but what like with how everything else has been playing out and how everything will play out in the story. But so
Well,
I didn't really get it. I don't get how people got so upset over something that it was expected almost.
I think like you were saying, also like nobody has like a badass death, but like I think all the deaths in the series honestly like fit very well with like the setting, like being in like an apocalyptic, like a post-apocalyptic Earth. Like everything's just gonna happen. Like I feel like all the deaths like happen in line with like that kind of tone.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I said, how did everyone forget what Joel did? He screwed humanity. He got what was coming to him. I mean, in terms of karma and shit, like you'd have to expect that Joel would get something coming to him. But
that was at least what like everyone thought the second game was going to be about. Like, like he has to.
It obviously like caught me off guard, but dude, it was expected at some point. Not that early, but yeah, I expected the death to happen.
Imagine how many people would be after, how many Fireflies would be after Joel after that situation, like you
Or
kind of had to
somebody,
expect.
yeah. There's bound to be at least one group of people that went after him, and we see what happens. Like, do you guys wish he died in a different way, or like, are you guys upset about how he died, or the circumstances of it, or anything like that?
I mean, I
I
can't
don't think I
really,
would have done it differently.
I don't know what Naughty Dog, like, it's completely their choice. Like, we can't make the game, so I mean, they had to do it and do it in their own way, and you got to live with it. I don't know how they could have made this different, to be honest.
It served Joel's death served its purpose for the story of the game.
Yeah,
I think it served its purpose. It wasn't immediately apparent, but throughout the game's storytelling, it constantly goes back to that, and there's flashbacks, and you really like, you kind of, from the rest of the game, you learn that Joel really kind of did have it coming to him. Obviously, it was super early and there's that shock factor, but that was beautifully done. I don't think they could have done it any better, in my opinion, especially after finishing the game. And again, people have to fucking finish the game before you have an opinion on it.
Yeah.
Or
And also, and like adding on to that, John, like, yes, Joel dies at the beginning of the game, but also his presence and is like felt throughout the whole game. Just like how
people act like he's just not in it for the rest of the game.
Yeah, like the way they use him after this point in the story is like, in my opinion, so beautiful. But like just like how Sarah's death, like is the Kickstarter for the first game, his death is the Kickstarter for this game. And also like kind of as a parallel to the first game, just like, you're playing as Joel but it's, you know, the kind of the heart of the story is Ellie. I think as a reversal to the first game, you're playing as Ellie in this game, but Joel is like the heart of this game. Especially, you know, they don't just kill him off and just move on. Like, they constantly circle back around to him dying and like what that means to not just Ellie, but also Abby and everyone around them. Like, this scene is constantly brought, like, people come back around to it and talk about it. And it's not like another game or another series or something that would maybe kill off the character and move on because the story needs to move on and get to the next stuff. They keep circling back around to it. You see Joel smashed in the head up until the very end of the game. It keeps cutting back to it, which is,
You go back to it later when you play as Abby, like literally,
Yeah.
like
You see it again from Abby's perspective.
yeah.
It's all third person, but it's still from Abby's perspective, which I think is also cool from a director's standpoint, how they were able to differentiate perspectives like that from a third person point of view, because you see the death scene of Joel from Abby's point of view and you see it from Ellie's point of view. They're both third person and they're both completely different.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about their directing too. I think it's insane.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they could have done it any differently.
Yeah, it was yeah, I wouldn't change it, honestly. And I think the next scene after it is like just as sad, because it's like you see Ellie at Joel's grave and like, you know, it's like, okay, you know, for a second I was like, wait, they didn't show like a casket, they didn't show like it just cut to black, but then it shows the you know, you know, his grave, and it's like, okay, yeah, no. I thought for a second
the man fell out of a building and got pierced by a metal rod in the first game. So I think we all kind of were like, maybe he's still alive. Who knows?
Yeah, like I was thinking maybe they're gonna pull Last Jedi or some shit, like keep him alive, you know, but with like Princess Leia and all that. But no, they commit down to it. They double down with the grave, and I want to point out, like, when she goes to Joel's house and is walking through it, like this, John, how you're talking about like how human this game feels. Like, there's this one thing from when she was walking through his house and like she's going to go get his gun, obviously, right, his revolver. But she walks into his closet and she just smells his jacket.
I remember
Like,
that.
and like that fucked me up the first time, because I'm like, damn, like that's a very that's a, you know, that's a pretty, like, it's just so simple, you know, like
Such a human thing to do.
yeah, like she, like, no words are said. She just like puts her head up against her jacket and, like, you know, she like it's just like, you know, that's the thing. I've so many people that I know that don't like this game. A lot of those people just have never played it. Like, almost everyone I know that's played it, everyone I know personally I've talked to that's played it, like, you know, at the very least really likes this game, which and essentially, like, this sets up the mission. You know, we now know, we believe in Jackson vulnerable, but you know, Tommy flip flops around a lot in this game, and I can and he tries to get Ellie to stay for an extra day and think about it, and lo and behold, he leaves before her, and, you know, essentially sets up the quest. Time to go to Seattle and hunt down these motherfuckers who killed Joel. And we're setting up the story, you know, the supposed story for the game, which is going to be this manhunt to take down Abby. And then, you know, from there we get the iconic title shots, and we get into Seattle day 1 with Ellie and Dina. And this first half of this level is actually interesting because Naughty Dog has done this now like 3 times. Andrew can attest to it, where there's like a kind of open world section in each one of their games. And so that's actually the start of this level. What did you guys think of this? I think this was probably Naughty Dog's best open world section. Andrew, I want to actually ask you what you thought and how this compares to, you know, Lost Legacy and Uncharted 4.
Yeah, so like what I equate this to most closely from Naughty Dog is like Lost Legacy, when you get in the part where you like have all this different the open world part of Lost Legacy. I don't remember what area it's in. Do you know what it's called?
It's called the something Gats.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I just remember that because there's, you know, different parts that you have to go to, and there's no real general direction on where you have to go to. They just give you a map and they say, oh, Chloe, here's all the locations. Like, and then you kind of just have to like go through that. And I think this part, I equate it the most to, you know, this open world section on Seattle Day One. However, I think this one was not as well put together as the Lost Legacy one, just because going for the trophies, like I miss this trophy, like going to all the locations, because not all the locations are on the map. Like you have to visit a lot of locations that aren't on the map. So I'm going through, you know, looking at the map. I'm like, okay, I marked off this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, all of these, and I never popped it. So I ended up having to go back to my second playthrough and do it. But I remember in Lost Legacy, it was like very, you know, they gave you an exact thing of where you had to go, and you had to hit each of these parts. And I thought just the map made it a little confusing, but maybe if I wasn't going for the platinum or trying to get all the trophies, I probably would have had more fun with it. But I liked being able to go into, like, you know, the bank, all the abandoned buildings, you know, like there's just like a random semi truck that you have to explore. Like it's pretty cool. Like,
Take on me.
Yeah. And going through like the music store, finding the guitar, the pet store, finding like all that stuff. And I think it added, especially to like the collectible aspect, like explaining more of like the events between the first and the second, not necessarily from Joel and Ellie's perspective, but just events that happened around the world and that between that time, like just being able to like all the collectibles made the story like even better, especially going through the second time, collecting 100% of them. And like all the notes, all the like side conversations, all like the mementos left behind by like other people in the world. I mean, I definitely liked playing through the open world section the second time, just because I was, you know, meticulously going through trying to find every single piece I could, and how it all tied it together is really cool. And I think also the first time you go into the like church thing, damn it, what's the
it's a dome. It's
the synagogue. The synagogue. I think like when you got in there and they reintroduced like from Uncharted 4 the rope swinging mechanics, I was like, okay, they got a pretty good grasp on this open world thing now. Like it was really cool to be able to like to see all, because this is like the first time I really saw all the like mechanics from like previous Naughty Dog games like Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy like be implemented in a different like I mean, you're not throwing
situation,
a fucking grappling hook and, you know, rappelling across, you know, islands in the Pacific Ocean. You're like in a synagogue, like scaling like an apocalyptic city. I thought it was awesome. I love this open world section.
This is a really good spot in the game to like get a bunch of loot and collectibles and kind of take a break and just really enjoy the scenery. I found this a really good opportunity for me to get a bunch of ammo and like, you know, just stock up on stuff before combat. Because a bunch of these buildings have loot that you can just pick up and stock Ellie's arsenal up with.
But I thought this was one of the most fun parts of the game, just to be able to fully explore the city that you're going to be spending essentially the rest of the game in. But it also lends well and gives credence to how well Naughty Dog tells their story. Because like the first game, a lot of the story is told through small details and stuff when you're exploring buildings. And this section of the game is no different than that. And I think it does it super well too. The music shop, another music shop. It's obvious that they love music in the apocalypse. I mean, everyone loves music at all times, but but it's especially prevalent now how important it is in the apocalypse. And I loved Ellie's version of Take on Me, because it
makes it sound sad,
because it actually is a sad song, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll be gone in a day or two.
Yes, it's so good. I love the Seattle scene and being able to explore. And the horses, holy shit. I remember hearing something about the directing of the game and how they like they had to film dogs, they had to film horses to get like accurate representation of how they move when they're not moving. Like, dude, and we're gonna repeat ourselves, I'm sure, but like every different aspect of the game just shows how well this game is done. And the Seattle day one with the open world is no different. It's crazy. And it'd be cool to see a fully open world Naughty Dog game. It would just also be interesting to see how they do that from a storytelling perspective. But
Do you guys
Naughty
wish there
Dog
was more?
embraced the little details. That's what I really appreciate about this part of the game is they just you really start to get a tell for how little details they paid attention to.
So now, like, kind of pulling it back. Do you guys wish there was another open world section or more open world section parts? Are you glad that there's just one? What do you prefer? These more open ended areas or like the more linear gameplay? Um, I think they did a good job having it just one because I think as the further you go along through the story, I feel like the story has a lot of momentum that's driving you forward where it might not make the most sense to be running around in circles in one big area, but and I would say I honestly prefer the linear gameplay to the more open-ended stuff for Naughty Dog specifically. But I really liked it too. I liked the open world section too, and I thought they had good restraint with just keeping it to that area. Because I talked to John about this where the original plans for this game was going to be an open world game, and it was going to be two open worlds. It was going to be Seattle and Jackson, and they ended up stepping away from that because of story reasons and adjusting to the story. But yeah, like what do you?
funny that they didn't back up because of graphical limitations. It was because of story reasons.
Yeah,
I think that's insane.
but yeah, what do you guys prefer? Like thoughts on, I guess, what I asked? Like, do you wish there's more open world stuff? How does it compare to the more linear stuff?
I think it's fine. Like, I mean, I've never really amounted Naughty Dog for being an open world game developer, honestly. But I like that they implement open world areas. But the thing I like the most about Naughty Dog is how they can tell a story and make it feel like you're like in an open world environment, but there's very like tight like sections that you have to go through. Like, I mean, even like after this part, like just like navigating like, you know, the Capitol Hill, like it looks open world, but like it's a very like in reality it's a very like tight like gameplay corridor that you can do at one time. Like it's just like one street and a few buildings. And I think it's fine that that's the only like big open world part, because honestly, like that was the most confusing part for me, is because I mean, I'm just used to Naughty Dog games like telling you where to go just by, you know, designing the environments in a very linear way. So like not being like having the very linear start to the game and then having this like open world, like kind of like it took me a little bit to get used to at first. So I mean, I'm fine with it. I mean, Naughty Dog has their own gameplay way. And
this is one thing I noticed, like starting in Uncharted 4, Andrew, you could probably test, is like, but definitely in this game, like the areas feel just like actual places. It's not like open, like it's not exactly obvious, like, oh, I just have to go to the other side of the room, or I just have to get to the end of the street. It's like, even, and especially during some fighting scenes, sometimes you don't know what, like, what exactly is the way out of here. But somehow this is the craziest part about Naughty Dog. They can make these crazy big open areas, and somehow you can still find a way to get to the end of the level. They do a lot of like subtle level design. Specifically, the level design in this game I haven't talked about is amazing. Where you can still get to the end of the level, but it still feels like you're navigating through like a real area, which I think is super cool. Also, one thing I want to point out, like Andrew, also you said the notes in this game. This is also the first time we start seeing the mention of Isaac. You see this guy mentioned constantly.
Yeah, constantly. He's like put up like a God King, like God King Isaac here.
Yeah, like this guy is constantly mentioned throughout, not Abby, through Ellie's story. You're like, who the fuck is this Isaac guy? And also, I think this is worth pointing into some real world inspirations of this game, because I've mentioned this before. This an inspiration for this game's story is the Israel-Palestine conflict. I think you can kind of tell that complexity of that with maybe the general way the story goes, but I think also you see it in the way Seattle is set up. Like, like there's essentially two raging factions going against each other, destroying land, fighting over land constantly. And even like you read from the notes before the WLF even came by, it was Fedra. You never see Fedra, but Fedra got like essentially taken out by the WLF. And essentially now you have WLF and you have Scars just constantly fighting over each other. And just like the Israel-Palestine conflict, you see when on Abby's side, they keep pushing back the point of like, oh, well, these guys killed our guys. Well, these guys broke the truce. Oh, well, these guys crossed the line. Oh, well, these guys actually were the ones who started the fight before the truce. And it's just like, okay, where do you draw the line in terms of like why these people are fighting and who's right and who's wrong? And I think you see that influence of that conflict directly in how Seattle is set up, and like specifically the WLF and the Scars. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. But yeah, we can keep it going from there. Yeah, so from there, they've outside of the open world section, we get to, they go into the Saravina Hotel, which I think it was the base at one point. Literally earlier that day, it was the base. And they moved out of it because they're moving back to the stadium to get ready for some things. But, we walk into that room in the Saravina, and we see like those people tied to the chairs and, tortured. And it's a nice little callback to the first game where Joel tortured those two people to find out where Ellie is. Tommy did the same method to find out where Abby is. And, that takes them to, which I think is a cool little callback, but that takes them to the TV station, and they find out, another one of the other people is also dead. There's two people are dead from Tommy, or the first person was dead from Tommy. The second people I think died from the Scars at the TV station. But you find Ellie's, Ellie finds the pictures of everyone, like Abby, Mel, Owen, Nora, so it's like, okay, now we, that's the hit list. That's who we got to take out. And then we have this cool little chase scene through the TV station also this is in the TV station. This is where we kind of get the first little sneak peek of the Scars. Because if you guys remember, you go into the TV station and all those bodies are hanging in the TV station. And that's like another like super creepy imagery. Like the people hanging with their guts cut open.
Oh yeah, that was disgusting.
Yeah.
Just looks so real.
Yeah, this game is just so gruesome in general.
Gory.
Yeah. But then which also I guess I've kind of been jumping around a lot, but this is also when you start fighting the WLF, when Ellie and Dina's horse gets blown up, and Ellie comes across the first guy of that group, Danny. Is it Danny, or I'm trying to remember what his name is. The dude, he's the only guy in that group that I can't remember their name. Like the one she kills.
The dude with the hat.
Yeah, the dude with the hat where Dina crashes in.
Yeah, I don't think I notated her name or his name either.
Yeah, he's the only one I can't remember his name, but I hate him. He's a shithole.
Yeah. He's like, we gotta kill her. We gotta kill her too.
Yeah, but and that it's kind of like a running theme of this game is no character is on the same page with one another. We'll get to that later, but essentially, they make it to the end of day one. The only real big revelation, the two revelations that come out are Ellie finds out that Dina's pregnant, and Dina finds out that she's immune. And we get, I want to talk about what happens at the end of this day, which is the birthday gift scene. And in my opinion, this game's equivalent to the giraffe scene in the first game, which is the rocket ship scene. In my opinion, that is like the giraffe scene in this game. And I think it's amazing. It is so well directed and so well done. And that got me choked up playing it the second time through and the first time through, because it's just like, it's so bittersweet playing through that level, because you get to see Joel again, but it's like, Naughty Dog knows what they're doing. They're like, because it's like you feel happy in that level, but it's also like, shit, like it's not gonna last. Like
Yeah.
this is,
Ellie's finally taught to swim in
Yeah.
that sequence. Like Ellie learns to swim, so you don't have to take her across fucking wooden platforms or wooden pallets on the river anymore.
Yeah.
And they go to a museum and they look at all the stuff there, and it was so fun. It was a really nice break from all of the sad shit from the game, because that entire scene is just happy, and it really highlights the father-daughter relationship that Joel and Ellie have, and that we all love to see. And we really get to see it well here. It's so well done. Joel gives Ellie like a cassette tape of like the Apollo 11 launch. Yeah. So she has a helmet on from this museum, an astronaut helmet, and they like hop into a space shuttle not escape pod. I don't think that's what it's called, but it's from a space shuttle. It's what you fall down to Earth in. And she sits there and just closes her eyes and listens to it. And like, it's like she's there, everything's shaking around. Like she's smiling. She's so happy about it. And then Joel's like, did I do good? Yeah. She's like, fuck yeah, you did. Oh my gosh. Like, it's just such a great scene. And it's really cool to see them being happy in such a sad game overall, because that's one of the happiest scenes.
I'd say it's the happiest scene.
Yeah.
It's probably the last one for the rest of the game after that.
Yeah, that I would honestly agree. That is probably the last happy scene in the game. Like, actually, maybe unless you count like them at the farm for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think
for a slight time.
I think this second half of day one was like, and just to go back a little bit before I talk about the space scene, but like, can we talk about the tunnels and how fucking amazing that shit looked when you were
the red lights
with like the red lights and stuff? Like, it's the coolest looking area in the whole game, because you just have this like faint red glow everywhere, and you're going through these tunnels. And then the other thing I thought was funny was, so this game came out like during like kind of like on the end of like the massive part of like all like the protests last year, but like going through Capitol Hill, like after the Chaz was a thing, like the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in real life was a thing, was just like,
yeah.
I don't know. I was like, oh, Capitol Hill, I've heard of that in the news. It's like a lawless wasteland, like even present day right now, which is like funny. Hilarious to like think about. I was like, man, there's like, this is probably not far off of what it looks like right now. Jesus.
Yeah, they're rocking masks and shit in the game too. A lot of
yeah, I know. A lot of parallels. Yeah. Remember they had to rename Outbreak Day because of COVID.
Yeah, it's just called Lassos Day now.
Yeah. But anyways, the space scene, I think like one of the most iconic shots from the entire game is just that image of Ellie with the spaceship helmet on, and it's like when the whole scene is happening, it's like looks like she's actually in space, and she's just like laying there like this, like just staring up. It's such a cool moment in the game, and it's really touching because it's like because you see throughout the game like Joel has like all this space related stuff, so like just seeing like how much care he put into like making like paying attention to Ellie's interests while he was alive and like doing all this stuff from her is like extremely touching. It made him seem like an actual like dad to her.
Mm-hmm. And like and that's like kind of one of the criticisms I want to knock at for like that people take out of this game that I don't agree with, is that like people try to be like, oh, they want Abby to be like the hero and they want Ellie and Joel to be the villains. And I feel like that's not true, because it's like there's so many encounters that lead you on to both interpretations of like them being a hero or a villain. And like people would talk about how they just treat Joel like shit in this game or something. Like, dude, like this scene is like one of the, like they still show his good side and his caring side throughout this entire game. They don't just there. And yes, there are scenes where he does double down on the lie and brings, we see some of his darker parts, but it's not like that's the only thing we're seeing. Like there's a lot of parts where you still see Joel's, dad side essentially. Like, from the beginning of the game with playing that song and helping Abby out and the museum scene. There's a lot of good Joel scenes in terms of where they show him in a good light.
I feel like Naughty Dog's intention was to like have no antagonist or protagonist. I feel like people need to understand that.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody that's supposed to be the good guy. There's nobody that's supposed to be the bad guy. Everybody's kind of in between. Everybody has their good side and everybody has their bad side. And this is just one of those moments that shows that Joel may have fucked the entire world over, but at least he's a caring like individual that they'll do anything for Ellie. So
Parker, did you see the that like kind of Apollo 11 sequence? Because I know it like you can walk past it.
I don't think I got it, but I went in like the space shuttle thing with the helmet on and
yeah.
That's a part of the main story, but I thought that scene was just very touching altogether. I really enjoyed going through the whole museum. And just looking at all the little different artifacts that they showed, I thought it was super cool.
Yeah. One thing I also picked up on playing the game the second time was like why each flashback was there. Like that flashback, it makes sense because right before she falls, like she's thinking about it, like thinking back on it, she's playing the guitar and she's thinking back, to her good memories of Joel. So it flashes back to that quote unquote, that good memory of Joel. And we see that. But from there we go into day 2. Now day 2, the first half of it is trying to find the human or the male, the male, the male trespasser. Now it's funny because when this game before it came out and there was people previewing this game, like reviewers, they let like IGN and GameSpot and Game Informer, they let sites play through this section of the game. And at the end of it, and just like at the end of the trailer, they want you to believe that it's Joel who's trespassing, like before the game came out, But it, actually it is not Tommy, Jesse. You think I'll let you do this on your own? But Parker, I wanted to pass this to you because up until this point, there's this entire section is like insane in terms of I feel like this section has the most amount of enemies in the game. This like dog section, it is wild. But
you have to this is where you learn like the patterns of The Last of Us 2. So my one complaint about The Last of Us 2, and this is my only complaint, I don't have any others to speak of. The one complaint is that when you start to understand the pattern of how the game works, you can kind of figure out a way to get around it, or like, just you kind of know how everything works at a certain point. Like there's only so much that the game developers can do to like counteract, certain ways of interacting with the enemies. So you can kind of get around everything by either sprinting through it and then hiding, or that's what I did a lot of the time. I kind of just sprinted through a bunch of enemies and then I just would hide behind a barrier and lose all of them and then just keep going. So this is a part of the game that I started to learn really how everything worked. And it definitely was a frustrating part because it felt like after day 2, you're kind of just exhausted. Like I just went through a gauntlet.
Yeah, literally that whole sequence is really hard to do, I feel like, too, because you don't want to kill a dog. Dude, they make the dogs seem so real. I didn't want to kill any of them, but you're forced to kill at least one. At least one.
Well, there's like no way around it because they will literally follow your trail. Like you cannot.
Yeah,
I would
like
throw
they follow your
bricks and just
they follow your like scent too. I'm pretty sure. Like there was some way that you had to hide from dogs that was a little bit different than people. I know you had to be like further away.
Yeah, they
follow
follow your
from
trail
further away.
Yeah, they follow your yeah. What
Yeah,
I would
You'd
do
have
is
to
have to,
like
like-
walk around a building to like lose them and like be super careful and deliberate about it.
What I did was I'd throw a brick or a bottle, and that would make the dog actually like go away a little bit, and that's how I would.
what I would do is I would see that they got my trail, and what I would do is I would like move along the trail a little bit, and I would put like one of those trap mines on the trail. So
You told me that, and I used that method because of that.
and then I would keep moving, right? And then eventually the dog would get blown up by
And you
this
hear the
bomb.
whimper. You
Yeah.
hear the whimper, and you hear the human's reaction to it. Ugh. Every dog has a name. Every person has a name. Every AI has a
A
name.
name, yeah. And then you know,
Ridiculous.
with I'm just playing with you, man. We go to we get kind of a little bit of a cross between like Uncharted and The Last of Us with that like kind of that car sequence where you know like Jesse's driving and you're like shooting all those people. I thought it was a pretty cool sequence, but that essentially takes us to the end of the first half of the day at least. And we get a flashback. And this flashback, even this one, it makes more sense to me is, you know, right, you know, they take him back to the theater, and it's the situation of hiding a secret from someone that deserves to know. You know, Jesse not knowing that Dean is pregnant. And like the whole thing is like, you know, she asks him, why didn't you tell him? And she just says, not the right time. And, you know, like in that first flashback in the second day kind of goes into that, like, you know, the sniping lesson with Tommy. And then one of my favorites, and then you go through the hotel with Joel, and one of my favorite scenes in the whole game, where she calls him out on it, tries to call him out on it on the first time. Like, what happened at the Firefly base? What happened at the hospital? And, you know, Joel doubles down, you know, I feel like iconic line, like, you know, I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different, but they ain't. Like, and
The way he says it, man.
like, and it's like, that's one of my favorite scenes of the game, just that line. But like, what did you guys think of this flashback and like maybe Joel doubling down? And I love this scene. And I love the next flashback even more, but John, maybe.
Yeah, I love this scene. I love the quote, obviously. I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different, but they ain't. It's just, it really, it just tells you that Joel believes 100% that what he did was the right thing. And I think that's really powerful. And it says a lot about Joel's character, and it says a lot about, you know, the world they live in too. You know, who knows if the vaccine ever would have came out? We still don't know that. That's still a question of The Last of Us, a hypothetical. Would it have ever have even panned out? And Joel didn't believe that it would. And he doubled
I don't think
down.
it mattered
and
to him too. Yeah.
It didn't. No, he didn't care. I think he figured, and I think we can all figure the same, is that the world is just fucked beyond belief. How are you going to distribute a vaccine to the 800,000 people or so that are left in the world? Or more, who knows? But this whole scene is really powerful to me because at this point in the game, you almost start to wonder if Ellie ever like truly loved Joel after she found out. Because from this point on in the story, you really only get attitude from Ellie in the scenes with Joel. Like, she's pissed. She says straight up, you took away the only thing that mattered about me. Like, this was the only thing that mattered about me as a person, and you took that away from me. You didn't give me a choice, Joel. But oh gosh, it's insane. It's insane, and it took a lot of balls, I think, to double down on that. But I knew they were going to do that. I knew that Joel was going to double down on it. He had to. You saw it in the beginning scene. He feels like he was the hero there. But what did you guys think about that?
That brought up the question to me, like, did Joel do it for Joel, or did Joel do it for Ellie? You know, and I think that's kind of what Ellie was arguing. Like, did you just do this for yourself, or were you really doing it for me?
Yeah.
But
And
you
she asked
start to
good
get more
questions.
flashbacks
She asked
later
good
on.
questions. Like she asked good questions like how did this not like why did you take me out of the hospital before I even woke up? You know, like very valid questions that, you know, I think a level-headed person would ask about that situation. Like and
Yeah, it shows that these characters are more than just like video game AI computer nonsense. It shows that they actually like remember and they will actually interpret different situations and like make their own minds up. So
Again, it's so human.
it's crazy.
yeah.
But I absolutely you'll get more. We'll talk about this more later with more flashbacks, but Ellie does kind of start to show Joel a little more attitude and a little more, just more angry at him from this point on.
Yeah, and this is also that, you know, you start asking the question, okay, what was the state that their relationship ended it at? Did she know? Like, it's like, did she know when Joel died? Like, while she's on this mission to kill Abby, does she know that Joel did what he did? And at this point, you know, you don't know. And then from, you know, then there's the rest of day two. The main things I want to touch about day two, we finally get the introduction to the scars. Every time I played this game, I was Parker. I'm curious if you did. I think I remember John jumped out of his seat because we were actually there. I remember we were watching John play the game during this section. But when you're walking through the forest and and you're walking, and then an arrow just flies and hits you right in the shoulder, and then there's that like. It's like, and you know, she's like pulling out the arrow, and then you just see the camera zooms out and the scars are walking towards you, and you're just like, oh shit. Like, first of all, that arrow like always makes me jump because it's so loud. Parker, I'm curious if you remember that and if you jumped out of your seat or not.
I do remember that, and I was kind of expecting, because I saw the body hanging there, you know, like off the tree, and I was like, there's got to be something fucky about to happen here. Like I knew. So I didn't really jump out of my seat, but I was still shocked. Like, it was loud. Like,
yeah. And
oh
this entire next section of the game is actually the E3 demo. And it's actually really, I want to give another shout out. Like, E3 demos are notoriously very scripted and hard to replicate, or like some of that shit just doesn't happen in the game. You can almost completely replicate the E3 demo in the game. And it's like, you know, you crawl under cars and you get pulled out and like all this crazy shit, and everyone's talking to each other. And this is the first time you see them cut open some dude and his guts come flying out, and it's fucking dark as shit. And I just want to give another shout out to John's playthrough of this game. One of the cleanest things I've ever seen in a game is when you get to the end of this scars section, there's that big dude with like a hammer that's like trying to kill you. And I still remember, like, it was like, you know, John like was playing and he got like thrown over the table, and he got up and he just like did this one clean headshot into that dude. And that dude, like, the way that guy fell down, I've never seen something look that good in a video game. Like,
It was like, it looked scripted.
yeah. And it was like, it wasn't scripted. That was, you know, like, you can make like scenes that almost feel scripted in this game just from like how dynamic the gameplay is, which I think is a testament to it. And then so
I hope I clipped that.
That was like that's one of my favorite scenes in the game, and it's not a scene that can happen, and it wasn't even me playing it.
Dude, I loved it. Yeah. It just looked so scripted. And you can, like you said, you can do that with so much of the game because the whole thing is cinematic. Even the gameplay, it all feels, and it seamlessly goes through cutscenes. Yeah, exactly. It just seamlessly goes from cutscene to gameplay like nothing else.
What do you guys think of like the WLF versus the scars in terms of gameplay? Like, because I thought the scars were harder than the WLF because one, they're like communicating through whistles. So it's not it's not clear what they're communicating about, which makes it interesting. And you know, I've seen like Naughty Dog talk about that, how they wanted you to be like, what the fuck is going on? Because you don't know what they're saying with their whistles. And then also they do stealth as well, they got those arrows that you have to pull out. Like, I think the scars are harder than the WLF, but what do you guys think?
Scars are definitely harder.
Easily.
Way harder.
You had to be a lot more stealthy.
Because with the WLF, you could really predict what they were gonna do, like in terms of like the direction they were gonna head towards you at, or like they were less stealthy, so you could use the listening monitor and kind of see where they're at more. With the scars, the listening monitor does not work nearly as well because they will literally do the same thing. Like they'll go stealthy. And the arrows that you have to remove, if you don't remove the arrow, it literally takes away your health little by little. So you have to remove it. But if you're getting shot at, you can't really do that. So you have to really strategize and find a way, like find a hiding spot to get that done at quick so you can stop losing health. So I feel like that alone leaves you like with less health than you usually would in a battle, just because of that.
It's a whole added gameplay element.
It's really it just feels so realistic, like because in real life, if you were doing the same thing as Ellie, like you would notice the same thing. Like, oh, these guys fight completely differently. I have to use a different strategy. So I really like how they incorporated that.
Yeah, and from there you go back, get to the hospital. I feel like an iconic location in this game. And just hospitals in general, really, with The Last of Us. But, hospital scene, main thing I want to talk about is the chase scene at the end of it. That chase scene with Nora is badass, I think. And then just, falling into the basement, and it's the red lights and, and then you kind of get that very dark, scene at the end of the level with Ellie essentially torturing Nora. And Nora, she brings it up. She's like think about what he did. Think about everyone that he fucked over doing that. Like, and she's just like not listening, and she's just like, and she's like, you're gonna tell me where Abby is. And yeah, that moment at the end of the level, we have to press square to beat the shit out of Nora, and it cuts to black.
Ellie's
The
like, I can
iconic
make your
line,
deck.
dude.
I can make your death swift
make
and
your
quick,
deck.
or you can
Or you can suffer.
or you can sit here. Yeah. And it was so badass too, because Ellie, like, she didn't have a mask and there were spores everywhere. And Nora's like, you're
the
her.
girl.
You're her. Like, what the hell? And
Dude,
Ellie's like, yup.
The most iconic
So badass.
line, especially from like the final gameplay trailer, is when Nora's like, I could have killed you, and then she's like, maybe you should have, and then just fucking clocks her. So legendary, dude.
Yeah.
Insane.
And like,
Just shows how badass Ellie was.
Maybe you should have.
but then even like right after, I don't know if you guys remember, like when that cuts to black and it goes back to the theater, like you could tell that even that like fucked Ellie up. Like she's walking up to the door and her like hands are like shaking, and like,
That's something I want to touch on, because we're going to get into the Abby v. Ellie conversation eventually. And I think that it's really important to realize how distraught Ellie was after every kill that she did. Every time she killed someone, she was totally distraught by it, because really all she wanted was Ellie. Think about it. Nora
Ellie?
was
You mean
Nora
Abby?
or Abby, yes.
Yeah.
Nora was going to die anyway. So she almost helped Nora out by making her death swift. But when we start talking about Abby versus Ellie, who was right, who was wrong, Ellie's kills were all valid, and she helped out Nora. The only kill that I think wasn't valid was before Nora, when she killed the girl that was playing the Vita. That was kind of harsh, and she didn't seem to feel very bad about it.
The music was bumping, by the way, on that Vita.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hotline Miami, baby.
Hotline Miami, yeah. It's funny.
Yeah, but I
it's a
just wanted to
running
point that out.
It's a running joke that girl is constantly on her Vita. You see her like a few times during the Abby section, and she's always playing her Vita, which is hilarious. But yeah, she's distraught. And one thing that's funny to point out also, I don't know if you guys know this, but at the end of that kind of scene, she's getting her shirt taken off by Ellie, or by Dina, and they have said that that's like one of the most like accomplished things that they did on the whole game, was being able to have that scene of her taking her shirt off, because like, and making it look as smooth as it was, because it's like a technical nightmare to like be able to show that without it like clipping the fuck out or like glitching out or something. So that's a little interesting tidbit. But hospitals, the talk about look how many people we fucked over leads right into the final Ellie flashback for her section, at least, which is her going back to Salt Lake City, and she's going back to the hospital. And the moment that I feel like I was waiting years, like this is the scene I wanted to see. Like when I played this game, I wanted to see this happen, and I'm so glad we got to see it. The scene where she finally calls him out and he tells her the truth, and it's like they don't overdo it. It's like like it's such a heartbreaking scene because like you can see Joel's like about to cry before he tells her, and like this scene might be my favorite in the game because it's so like I wouldn't have. It's like another thing. Like I wouldn't have done it any other way. Like it's
so raw.
Yeah, and like the facial expressions, holy shit, in this scene, like, dude, it looks so real. And it's like all she can do is like she just starts crying, like finding out what he did. And it's another thing, Joel doubling down on like, he doesn't say like what he did. He's just like, they would have killed you, so I stopped them. Like that's all he has to say. And it's just like, and then the music playing in the scene, like, oh man, dude, this scene is
another
like,
iconic quote. Another one. If the good Lord gave me a second chance, I'd do it all.
No. That's way later in the game.
Is it really?
That's the final flashback.
Oh no.
Yeah,
It was earlier.
John, just
I swear it was earlier.
Oh, brother, this guy
stinks. No, yeah.
Yeah.
This guy stinks.
Yeah, that's the very end of the game. But no, but like this scene, like what do you guys think? Like I feel like this is the scene that like I feel like everyone probably wanted to see in the sequel. Thoughts on not maybe everything through the hospital and this shit.
I honestly left that scene sad because of the way Ellie kind of reacted to it. I mean, I thought she was gonna like be happy that Joel did that for her at the end of the day, but she did not come off of it like I thought. I ended up just being like, oh, is this really how it's gonna end off between Ellie and Joel? Like, is this how their relationship is gonna come to an end before he dies? So that's really what I was just mainly sad heading out of the scene because I did not want to see the relationship end on that sour of terms. But I think Joel did the right thing at the end of the day. Just told her straight up, didn't double down on it again, just told her how it was. And that made it so that Ellie knew exactly what was going on and that she could kind of base all her decisions off that.
But not exactly. Because she asks and he's just like, they were going to kill you and I stopped him. Yeah, she can assume everything happened, but he didn't tell her in black and white. And then Ellie says like, I'm done. She literally says,
I'll go back to
I'm
Jackson.
done. Yeah. It seems like at that point, Ellie just hates Joel.
Well, it's interesting because like before this flashback, you're like, okay, she's trying to avenge him and she doesn't know what he did. But then after this scene, I was like, she's still going on this quest and she knows what he did. And I was like, up until we get into it in the end of the game, but like, I was like surprised. I'm like, damn, she's still going on this revenge quest. And like, she knows what he did, which I thought was interesting. But obviously the real reason I think she goes on this quest is for a different reason. But then we get into day 3. Day 3, there's not that much worth going into. Except the end, really, where she does get to the aquarium. There's also a bloater fight, which Parker, I know you said you had some fun with, or maybe you're mentioning the Rat King. Yeah, get to the aquarium, which also I think is interesting up to this point. When I was playing through the game, I thought Abby was at the aquarium because she was hiding from Ellie, or she was trying to stay away from Ellie, which is funny because when you play through Abby, you get a better understanding of everything, of like why certain characters are where they are and why things are happening. And it's also, you get to see like Ellie is not a pro, and like when she comes in to kill Mel and Owen, she's trying to do the same thing, that like point to the map and do all this shit, and she is not good at it. Like she is like holding it up right, like both of them can see it, and like she's, you know, she fucks it up obviously because she ends up killing both of them. And she finds out Mel is pregnant. But also one thing, a little like thing I found out this after I beat the game. You know, her hearing goes out, you know, because she's freaking out because she finds out that Mel was pregnant, and she's just like hyperventilating and freaking out. And this is, I think, like the untouched part of people don't talk about is how traumatized Ellie is in this game, because when Tommy and Jesse are walking up to her, and you can hear them faintly, Naughty Dog actually recorded that line with Joel. She's not actually hearing Tommy call out to her. She's actually hearing Joel call out to her. And it's just like, it's just showing like small details. Like it's putting in the seed, like, dude, Ellie is fucked up in the head. Like she, like she is losing herself essentially. And like, you know,
if I ever were to lose you,
but I'm
all goes back to future days.
Yeah. I'm guessing you guys didn't know that little detail, but when I found that out, that was like, whoa, like like that shit's crazy. But thoughts on that? I don't know, like, do you guys have thoughts on anything in day 3 in particular? I thought the boat gameplay was pretty cool, like how you could drive it around and swim underneath it and snipe away like from far away from it. But thoughts on day 3, guys?
This was pretty short. I thought the boat gameplay was really fun because you kind of just got to experience a new element of The Last of Us. Like you didn't really get to play like that before. It was more fast travel. You didn't really do much combat. So it was just a little break from all of the action that you're kind of getting in the game. But I thought more the end of this episode was just kind of revealing. So we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah. John, did you have any thoughts on the Mel Owen shit, or Andrew?
Again, I think that Ellie was valid in what she did. I mean, Owen went to attack her. She stated numerous times that she just wanted Abby, which is messed up in its own regard, but she's getting revenge. And revenge, it's kind of a theme in this game, but it's an endless cycle. And I mean, Owen went to attack Ellie, and she really had no choice in that moment. It was either self-defense or she was going to die. And she had a lot to fight for at that point. I mean, she's got a love interest who's pregnant. So I think it's highlighting the human aspects of this game. But when people, you know, talk about, oh, they made Joel and Ellie seem like terrible people in the game, I don't think so. I think it's just people are terrible and they made them seem like people.
Yeah.
But I like day 3. I thought it was short, but it was really good from a storytelling perspective because we get to the climax of the game toward the end of day 3.
I guess, yeah, we should touch into that. We get back to the theater, and they're kind of like at that point, like, yeah, Abby gets to get away. Like, we have a pregnant person.
Tommy, Jesse, Dina, they're all together. Ellie. Yeah,
they're like, okay, we're setting out. We're heading out. And like, also worth pointing out early on in this level, when Jesse and Ellie are together, they have that chance to go save Tommy, and Abby is like, no, like, I'm gonna go get Abby. Or Ellie's like, no, I'm gonna go get Abby, which like shows like her, you know, kind of her traumas carrying her through it. Like she's just honed in on this one thing and isn't considering other aspects, like, hey, maybe we should save our allies instead of I want to go kill this person. But then, holy shit, Abby is at the theater, and we get
Abby shows up with Lev.
Yes, and we don't see Lev right there because the camera's set up in a certain way where you don't see him. But Abby's there, and crazy death. Jesse gets shot in the fucking head. I want to get your thoughts on that. And then, you know, Ellie's like, I know why you killed Joel. Like, I know why this happened. And, you know, Abby's like, we let you guys live. Like, and you guys,
you killed my friends.
Yeah.
And then you wasted it.
Yeah. And then just cuts to black. And before we get into the next part, like thoughts on Jesse getting murked, like Eddie.
That was horse shit, man.
Yeah,
It was
dude,
so
just
quick.
outta-
They did him dirty.
Just out of nowhere, he just gets fucking whacked.
They don't go back to him at all. It's just like bleh, gone.
Yeah, that. But also, I think it goes in line with like all the deaths in this game. They're very fast, or like like chicken. Just like even later, even on Abby's side, like Manny, like when like
We thought Tommy was dead in that scene too. She shoots Tommy
yeah
in the
that's
fucking head
yeah
or the
that,
shoulder or
Straight
something.
Yeah,
down
that's-
I
to
don't
your
know.
dome.
Yeah, it's just there's just a lot happening at this part of the game where you're like, oh my god, it's all coming to a crescendo.
yeah.
Um,
But
Yeah,
then-
at this point, I thought this was like gonna be the climax. Like I'm getting close to the end.
Yeah, and lo and behold, Last of Us Part 3 is in this game. But yeah, we go back again. We get another flashback, and we get sent to 4 years ago, and we find out that Abby's dad is, lo and behold, the doctor that was supposed
Jerry
to,
Anderson.
Jerry Anderson, yep.
yes, was supposed to perform the surgery, and it's just like yeah, and you get to see Marlene. This is the only time we see Marlene in the game, and we get to see even in that room, there's a lot of like disagreement. Like, what if this
Dude,
was your
Marlene was vouching for Ellie.
Yeah, I did that's some perspective that you didn't get in the first game. Like
They
I
did
thought,
Marlene so dirty. Fucking
Yeah, in the
Joel, man.
Yeah, in the first game, you thought of Marlene as an enemy, but like you really see her perspective in this one. Like you get a background conversation between her and the doctor.
Yeah, and like it's just like that's the thing. Like everyone is like no one's on the same page in this game because there's so many people have valid arguments. Even Jerry is like, think about like all the lives we could save, like all the things, all the horror that could be justified with this one act, And then she's like, Marlene's saying, "What if this is your daughter?" And then Abby comes in and says, "If I were if I was her, I would want you to do it." And it's literally 3 different perspectives just in that room. And it's just like, well, we know where that goes. But, and then, we cut to Abby, which gotta say, this hallway, I think is so fucking creepy.
You see it kind of multiple
you-
times throughout the game.
You see
almost.
it multiple times. You walk down this hallway so many different times for so many different circumstances throughout the entire series. And it's like all in the second game, it's like always ominous to me. Like, and I think it's really cool how they there's 3 different characters who have 3 different perspectives of walking down this hallway.
It's a super important scene, but it's honestly so short. It's like
Yeah.
4 minutes, but it gives a lot of perspective to everyone's point of view with the story and what's going down.
And then essentially, she walks into a room and lo and behold, her dad is dead. And we cut back to Joel's death and we get to see, her killing Joel again. It makes sense now. We know why. And then we get to see what they were talking about afterwards. And it's like they're about to kill Ellie. And Owen steps in and he's like, whoa. Like if we kill him, we're no better than they are. And I love this slide where it that dude with the hat is like, look at my face. And he's like, fuck your fucking face. Like I love Owen, dude. And he's also the one where when Abby's torturing Joel, Owen comes in and he's like, stop it. Like, we're done. Like, end this. Like, put us, we're done with this. Like,
Yeah, and like I said earlier, he's the best character because he keeps everybody very level-headed.
He's a
throughout the-
facilitator.
Yeah, he stops lots of small things from growing into much bigger issues.
Yeah,
for the most part.
and then to me, the ultimate goosebump worthy moment of this entire game, to me, always I get goosebumps whenever I see this scene. When Abby's like, stop, we're done. And she throws the golf club on the ground and it just cuts to black and you just hear this droning music and it just says Seattle and it just stays on that for a second. And then slowly pops up day 1. And you're just like, I was just like, oh, I was like, yeah, I was like, holy shit.
I was like, I gotta play the game again.
Yeah,
Shit.
but I want to, this, yeah, we should talk about this entire like 30-minute section because there's a lot to unpack because there's a lot that's revealed. I think, it makes sense. Like it ties things, you this is kind of what I was talking about, where it's like these two games are so intertwined. I know, John, you said that, and yeah, The Last of Us 1 can stand on its own, but like I just can't see it by itself anymore, because it's like this game to me not only is masterpiece in its own right, but in my opinion, it makes the first game better because so many things keep looping back around and like connecting back to the actions of the first game, and it gives you so much more context for the things that happen in the first game, which I think is great. Like I think that's like what the best sequels do, is they make the previous ones even better. And you get a lot of context for you get, okay, Abby is in the same spot as Ellie at this point. They're both trying to avenge their father figure, and from here on out we get Abby's story is really about, in my opinion, like the other end of the spectrum of like, okay, what is life after she completes her revenge mission? We're starting her story after her revenge mission is done. But I want to toss to you guys because there's just a lot to unpack here with Jerry and Abby and the Switch. Because the Switch is the big moment of this game. That Seattle day one popping up again, that's like the big turning point of this game. So I just want to get your thoughts on it. I love it. Like I got goosebumps when I saw it for the first time, and it's ballsy, and it's probably one of the craziest twists in any game or anything ever, in my opinion, like doing that. So what do you guys think?
So
Parker, maybe?
Yeah, so I actually got this part of the game on stream. Arsenal, you
Yeah,
saw.
I saw it.
Yeah, so this is really where I knew.
And I want to say, sorry, I want to also say this is also I feel like for a lot of people, the make or break point. So like,
Yes.
because it's like, how do you feel about playing as the quote unquote bad guy, quote unquote? But go ahead, Parker.
But this is where you really learn why Abby kills Joel. Like, you killed my father, so I kill you. So that honestly, that gives you more of an understanding of why Abby did what she did. But also that when the switch happens, I'm totally not expecting it, like at all. Like I'm expecting to see Seattle day 4, and you keep playing the game as Ellie, but you do go through the switch and you get that pivotal turning point, and you're just not knowing where anything's going at all. You're kind of at that segue into the next portion of the game. But I really, really, really enjoyed this part of the game because you're throwing all sorts of curveballs. You're learning why the characters are developing the way they are and why they're thinking the way they are, especially Abby. Because you get to hear more about her story and why she even bothered going to Jackson in the first place. She was on a mission. You kind of see the good side of Abby almost. But otherwise, that's really all I have to say.
I remember being kind of upset, honestly, because I was like,
It's definitely
okay,
jarring.
it is, because you hit the climax of the story and we learn, toward the end of the game that kind of is like the final sequence, before we skip forward a little bit in time. But it was insane because at that point you realize, okay, I'm not going to get the ending of this game for another few days of gameplay, because we're back to day 1. We're now seeing everything from Abby's point of view. So at first I was like, dude, I gotta play as this hoe, like, ugh. But then, immediately they justify it immediately, because the first section when the game switches after Abby's pointing the gun at them in the theater, the first scene is that 3 or 4 minute cutscene with Marlene and her dad, and like even her dad and her like letting the zebra free. So it's so human, and they justify you playing as Abby right away because they show her motivation. right away. And
Exactly.
it was great from a storytelling perspective how well they were able to do that and how quickly they were able to do that and how it made so much sense too. And the fact that the head doctor was Abby's dad, like, I don't know if any of us expected that coming in, that, you know, we kind of heard that it was a revenge story, but I don't think any of us expected the head doctor to be the revenge, the thing that kicked off all of this story.
It makes you think about whether Joel had it coming or not. Like, it really makes you debate that in your head. Like, did Joel really deserve to die? Because I honestly think he almost did, because he literally killed her dad. Like, she's on a revenge mission for that reason alone.
And you get the sense that right away, right as the sequence started and right as you start playing as Abby, my first thought was, wow, these two are not so different. These two are one and the same. And you start to get this Abby versus Ellie mentality. It's like you almost start to wonder whose side you're on. And I don't, we'll talk about it, but I don't even think they're necessarily, like, you could be on both sides a little bit.
Yeah.
But Andrew, what did you think about the initial Abby stuff?
I mean, I did like how they immediately showed, like, oh, hey, look, Abby's dad was the one that Joel killed, which, like, almost like adds something to the first one. If you play it again, you're like now I feel like maybe like playing the first one again would like feel different now that you like know everything you know throughout these games. But I mean I like the switch, and I was like you are, so when I saw it say like Seattle day one, I was like, holy shit, like goddamn, like what the hell do you mean day one? Yeah, I mean I enjoy the way that they transition from Ellie to Abby. I think it's a very smooth transition that they immediately, you know, it's just like bam, you're like on the road running.
Yeah, this is, so I'm gonna share my probably the biggest issue I have with this game. And that's I think if there's anything that this game maybe stumbles a little bit on, it's pacing. Because the game kind of does a bit of a hard reset at this point in a lot of ways. And I remember the first time I played it, like I had to take a little bit of a step back for at least like a day, I think, before like playing Abby's section. Because it feels like you're, me and John talked about this the other night. The second half of this game, borderline feels like a different game. You know, it feels like you're playing The Last of Us 3, because it's like completely different weapons, completely different abilities, completely different characters, you know,
different
like
different
collectibles. Like it, you know, like I kind of mentioned this to John. They talked about this interview. Like this is essentially like a double album of like a video game. You know, it's a double album. It's Naughty Dog's double album. And that's probably and a lot of times I think I'm like, okay, how, you know, like how could they have fixed this? Like, would it have worked better? Like sometimes I think like, I wonder how the game would have played if instead of doing all of Ellie's 3 days and then Abby's 3 days, like would have worked better if it was Ellie day one, Abby day one, Ellie day two, Abby day two, like switching back and forth. But I think after, like, I admit I think the pacing takes a little bit of a hit because of this, but I think keeping them separate is probably the best way they could have gone about it without it being like very whiplashy.
It would have felt more monotonous if it were day one, day two. I think it would have felt a lot more monotonous.
Yeah. So yeah, now we start Abby's story, which is its own little thing to go into. So yeah, here we go.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this entire episode. As we alluded to at the beginning, just with the scale and length of this discussion, we thought it'd be best to go ahead and split this up into 2 parts. Everything that you've listened to up to this point is the first half of the game, essentially. When we put out the next episode, which will be the second half of this conversation, it will be the second half of the game, and onward. And with the structure of the game, I think this is a pretty appropriate split. So thank you for listening up to this point. This is the end of this episode, but we hope if you enjoyed this conversation, hope to see you for the second part of this, and we can really put a nice little bow on this entire conversation in the next episode. So thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it. This is Ursula signing off. See ya.